Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku found love through music part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, cruellyours Wattpad. So let's start the video. I yelled, "Aizu honey, please don't run too far." I started lightly sprinting towards the enormous entrance doors through the fading daylight. Jumping up and down, my hair bouncing with the rhythm of my movement. 2 tickets for Auditorium C, my mother told the white-haired women who sat behind the counter. A pair of metal doors opened, and I grabbed her hand and stepped into the small enclosed room that was aired with music. He gave me an evil glare, rolling his eyes, to shortly return his gaze back to the stage. Finally taking a second to look around the dark room I sat in, I then noticed that of these seats were filled. Most of the people I didn't even know. Never even seen. When I looked to my right, I even saw pro hero best jeanist, sitting with his legs crossed, focused on the stage. "When's it going to start?" I whispered, starting to squirm in my seat, just getting ready for everything to begin. "Any minute now, Izuku. Be patient." I've been excited for this one. Winking face in this book, the character, 𝑦/N, will be of a decent. I do not know, nor am I learning the language. In the book I do use Google Translate, which I is never a good resource to refer to. So if you do speak the language in advance, my apologies. Most of the translations will not be accurate. This book will get really angsty, so feel free to exit now if you're not interested. This book is also still undergoing edits, punctuation, and grammar. If you see any mistakes, please feel free to let me know. My messages are open. Feel free to send constructive criticism or other things in relation. And LT 333 don't forget to vote. Class, quiet down. L/N is a transfer student, and I want you all to treat her with respect, help her get adjusted, and give her a warm welcome. The girl bows her head to the class and shows a small smile. L/N, you can take a seat behind. Aizawa scans the room looking for an empty seat, seeing one behind Ojiro at the back of the class. "Take that seat in the back." He points, gaining a nod from the girl as she starts to head towards the back of the class. As she's walking down the aisle, she accidentally makes eye contact with a blonde boy who sat with his eyes widened and arms crossed. They both held eye contact as she passed by his desk, the both of them in shock. 𝑦/N took her seat, and the teacher decided to take the initiative to start his class, the blonde boy's name beginning to linger in her mind for the rest of the day. Playing games that the driver was outside with all her bags and totes waiting for the girl to finish unloading the car. 𝑦/N had too many things and couldn't bring them onto the plane. So, she shipped all of her belongings to Japan so it would be easier to keep up with all of it. Although that alone wasn't a big help, 𝑦/N thought that because she was paying them to bring her personals, they would also help bring them inside as well. I guess that request was above their pay grade. 𝑦/N came back downstairs from her dorm, for what felt like the 59th time, and slipped through the entry doors and walked up to the back of the car, again. She picked up the closest tote that was in range and wrapped her hands around the handles on each side. Then the girl laid her eyes on the lightest box in sight and focused really hard. The box started to rise with ease, and made its way out of the car. She looked back inside to see a violin case laying on the floor where her books and folders were previously placed. And after some concentration, the case followed after the small box out of the car. She started walking away from the large doors when she heard a quiet, yet familiar "Hey, yeah, whatever," the blonde said, rolling his eyes, about to walk away. 𝑦/N turns and closes the doors of the big truck, starting to walk away, she almost immediately stopping in her place, watching as her vision became blurry as each second whipped by. 𝑦/N, Bakugu suddenly asked, looking at her current state. "You good?" Angling his head to get a better look at her as she held onto the truck. Her vision suddenly going clear again, she blinked a couple times to fully focus again. Looking up at the slightly worried boy. "Merci, but I'm fine. I just got a little lightheaded," was all that got out before her vision went completely. "You're finally awake," she heard. She looked up towards the doorway to see Katsuki walking in with a bottle of water with a relieved look on his face. He walked up to the side of her bed, placing the bottle of water on the side desk before yelling at her. "Are you crazy? What the hell is wrong with you? Passing out in the middle of the F street like that? You could have busted your head open." 𝐻/N rolled her eyes listening to him complain about the incident. 𝐻𝐸 comprends. Calmer, the girl said as she kicked her feet off of the bed and sitting up while she rubbed her eyes. "What the hell was that?" He also adds, crossing his arms with such attitude and irritation, watching as she brushed it off as it was something to be taken lightly. "I just passed out. Oh mon Dieu. It's not that big of a deal." "Not that big of a deal? When the hell did you start having regular passing out sessions?" he asked. "I'll tell you about it later. And also I got it approved that if anything happens here on campus, I'll have to stay with you all," she said, grabbing her phone from her pocket and getting up to leave the infirmary. "You're staying with us again? How come I didn't know? And why didn't I know that you were coming back today? Does that hag know?" Rampaging her with many questions that he had been waiting to ask all day. She laughed at his straightforwardness and answered all of his questions as they both walked back to their dorms. A few hours had passed since 𝐻/N little incident, and she was back in her dorm done with her shower, to be greeted by all the boxes and luggage that was previously set in place. With the help of Bakugo a couple hours ago, she sighed. Holding the towel to her body, she reached down to open a suitcase, taking out some clothes to wear to bed. A random shirt and some shorts. The girl flopped onto the undressed bed, leaving herself with the comfortable silence and her thoughts. 𝐻/N hasn't practiced at all in the past few days, and she was itching to get her hands back onto her violin. It wasn't that late. She assumed that this time would be a good time to practice. But where? She also contemplated putting all her belongings, but she thought that was boring. So she went back to her first idea. But where would she play? She couldn't possibly play in her dorm. She might wake her neighboring dorm mates who were already sleeping. Peut-être. Looking to her door, considering the idea. Getting up, she approached the door and turned the knob to see if anyone was still up and roaming. Looking to the left and to the right, there was no one in sight. Or so she thought. Looking back to see the violin case stranded at her bedside, their eyes light up in a bright shade of purple when the case lifted up into the hands that were placed outward. Then turning the gaze to a black folder that was soon met by the touch of the girl's fingertips. Finally leaving the room with a silent of the doorknob. Quietly making it down the stairs, she looked around the corner to see the commons empty. Silently congratulating herself, she kept forward to a clear door which she saw lead to a grassy backyard area. She walked across the group of couches and lounging chairs to reach a large sliding door that had a sign above that read 𝐻/N. Pressed her hand on the handle before she heard a male voice coming from the other side of the room. "You're the transfer student, right?" The girl quickly whipped their head around to see an oddly colored-haired boy that stood in the kitchen, finally catching her attention. She turned around to look outside once more and looked down at the door handle. What's stopping the merchants from coming in? The door's already unlocked. She led her fingers to the lock that sat above the doorknob, turning the lock to the right. Leaving the door and headed back up to her room. Was the last thought that crossed the girl's mind, before she opened the door to her room, in which consumed her into sleep. She asked herself, getting up to look out of her window to view the appealing city that was casted over by the sun. All of a sudden, she heard a phone going off on the other side of the room. Face with symbols on mouth, she chuckled. Swiping right on the screen and held the phone to their ear, wiping the slight crust out of her left eye. "Get up. Bonjour to you as well, catch. Open your door." Dashed, being cut off to hearing a banging noise at her door, the call immediately hanging up. 𝐻/N jumped and yelled due to the unexpected banging. Opening the door to see sleepy Bakugo with a tank top and sweatpants on. She looked him up and down agitatedly, giving him a very noticeable ugh before she slammed the door in his face and went to wash up and brush her teeth. "Breakfast, dumbass. What the hell? It's too early for breakfast, huh?" 𝐻/N complained. "I'm going back to bed," the girl said, waving her hand as she turned around to escort herself back to her room to resume resting in the comforts of her new room. "It's 10:30. he argued, shouting back. Stopping in her tracks, her head jerking back at his direction, yelling, 10:30. Checking the time, and yes indeed. It was 10:32 a.m. The time zones probably got you up, no wonder you're so tired. The blondie reasoned, even though he knew nothing about time zones, and how they worked in different places. I don't think that's how that works, 𝐭𝐴, she says, side-eyeing him. God, shut up, he replied. If anything, you look a lot more tired than me. Aggravated at most. They both arrived downstairs, to see tired kids making plates of food. Most already eating, some sitting on the couch, others making conversation, and more just making it to the commons as well. They both were greeted with good mornings, and questions along the lines of, how did you sleep, and how do you like UA so far? 𝐌/N engaged in conversation, like any social person would, and let the girls make her a plate of breakfast as they talked about anything and everything. Bakugo already had eaten, and sat down on the end of the couch next to J.I.R.U, who was watching the TV with Kaminari, who was still half asleep. 𝐌/N walked away from the girls as they went to socialize with their other classmates. 𝐌/N placed her plate and phone on the countertop, sitting in a bar stool that sat under the counter. She picked up her phone again to scroll to social media while she ate. As she scrolls, she starts humming a song. A song that was in French that she had learned many years ago. But then, she suddenly hears another voice humming the same song. She stopped humming, and turned around to see a yellow-haired boy walking behind her, food in his hand as well. Hey, she said, making the boy turn around. You know that song? She asked. 𝐿 avec cette chanson. 𝐿𝐵, she said, smiling. Watching as he smiled back, 𝑒𝐵, we're in the same homeroom, well obviously. And I'm going to assume that you are Ms. 𝐌/N, asking, and making an introduction at the same time. Looking upon a shorter, bright-haired male, he looked like he had a very personality. He had plate filled with tamagoyaki and a side of rice with a cup of orange juice in his vacant hand. Being outside, she learned that even though the sun was out, there still was a chilly breeze. Thanking herself that she brought her jacket outside. Her fingertips going numb, she opened the folder and pulled out a sheet of music. Propping the paper on the folder, preventing it from flying away. 𝐌/N took her attention away from the paper to opening the violin case to reveal a appealing brown coat covering the base of the violin, watching the glaze shine under the sun. 4 delicately placed strings running down the fingerboard, randomly turned pegs resting on the peg box waiting to be tuned, and a slick bow fitting perfectly into the side slot. Gently taking out the instrument, she held it under her chin, while taking the bow up into their DMT hand. She took a deep breath in, and let it out, the weather making the breath of air visible. Bringing the bow to the strings, she let it gracefully glide along the strings, and then pausing. Holding the bow in her palms, index, and middle finger, using her fingertips to tighten the peg. Then lifting it back up to her chin, she slid the bow across the strings one more. Bringing it down from the chin, the girl slipped the bow between her 2 fingers and turned the peg with their fingertips, and then lifting the violin back up to her chin. Repeating the same actions over and over again, until the tune was perfect. She stopped, and lifted the violin to her chin once more, and raised her bow. Taking in a deep breath and closing her eyes. Conversation started, and continued for a while. Laughing about trivial matters, talking about other classmates, and finishing conversations from breakfast. During her stay in France, making friends was never a part of her agenda. Sure, she tried, but she never could because she was always forced back into thinking of her studies and practice. Of course, 𝐌/N loves playing violin. Just not when she's forced to. The conversation is running dry, Mina pointed out. Let's talk about our first kisses. The pink-haired alien jokes. Und yes, Eureka exclaimed aloud. Mine was with this guy in my junior high class. He was so dreamy to me back then. She continued. If we are really on that topic, I don't believe that I have had mine yet, Yayarozu admits, sipping her still steaming cocoa, thinking if her current statement was true. Seriously? Not even an accidental one, Momo? J.I.R.U asks, getting a head nod no in return. What about you, L/N? J.I.R.U asks, looking in her direction, grabbing her now attentive attention. It was girl in the 3rd grade, I believe. It an accident, I never liked her or anything, it just happened. Although she was pretty. Recalling the past memory. Ooh, that's pretty rare. Mina adding to her statement, Achiko nodding in agreeance. I guess so. Let's talk about boys. Mina shouted as another topic of discussion rose. Have you seen Todoroki yet? He's like literally the hottest thing in 1A. No pun intended, of course, Mina said. I think he's cool, I mean he's just quiet. There's nothing to really have a crush on. He's only here to become a pro hero. I'm pretty sure he's not interested in that dating stuff, Mina. Says 𝐿𝑎𝑖𝑟. Agreed, he's a very admired and admirable student. He works very hard in his studies and in his hero work. He is soon to be in the top 10. It's only okay. Mina interrupts her, dragging out her words. Enough with the boring stuff. Gosh, you guys are so serious. Now, what about 𝑢𝑦/N? What do you think about him? Investigating her, Mina glares her down from the rim of her hot chocolate. Looking blankly, she sat there. You know, the one with the red and white hair. He stand out very well in the crowd. Oh, the boy with the spot on his visage. The girl questioned. Oh, is what? Asked Uraraka. 𝑦/N took her hand and made a circle motion around her eye, demonstrating the spots that she remembered seeing on his face when she encountered the boy in the commons the night before. They all looked at her with discomfort, stuttering before they say anything more. Yeah, let's maybe leave that part of the description when describing him. Okay. She didn't know Mina. Don't be mean. Clearing the strain in the air, 𝐿𝑎𝑖𝑟 switches her position in her chair and then gets up to wash her dish. It's not your fault, 𝑦/N, we just don't really talk about that of him. I understand. Apologies if I was being rude. Said 𝑦/N, drinking the last of the liquid that sat in the bottom of her mug. The conversation continued, jumping from one topic to another. Not even acknowledging the students walking in and out of the dorms, chattering amongst others, and the sun slowly, yet rapidly sinking below buildings. Sundown had begun with her concluding her second official day, peacefully at UA. Prepared. 𝑦/N was prepared. It was past 10 o'clock, and the boy had to sneak out of the dormitories to head to the convenience store that was down the street from the dorms. He shivered and took his hood off as he entered the store, giving the store clerk a hello before he started to walk around the store to see what he wanted to buy. He immediately walked up to the refrigerators, taking out a sweet tea before closing it back. He continues searching the store when he hears the chime of a bell that stood over the entrance of the store, alerting the clerk that a customer had entered the door, in which he pays no mind to. He grabs a bag of chips and leaves the hardest decision for last. He walks into the candy aisle and looks the rows up and down, searching for something he felt like eating. He hears footsteps coming into his aisle while he continues looking for a snack. Out of curiosity, he looks up to see a oddly familiar girl looking right back at him. Heart decoration, you are calling me at this hour, for what? A groggy voice answered. I'm hungry, 𝑦/N said. And that has to do with me because... Come with me to get something to eat. It's 2 dmn late, go to bed. It's 10:10. My point. He heard an exasperated sigh over the line with shuffling in her foreground. Just wait until tomorrow, you can get something to eat before we leave. But I'm hungry now. Good night, 𝑦/N, and with that he hung up the call, shoving his phone under his pillow, and soon felt another vibration before he could even lay his head on his pillow. He pulled it back from under the pillow once more, and hung up the phone. She muttered, looking at her home screen in disappointment. The girl got up from her bed, put on her jacket, grabbed her phone, wallet, and keychain before cutting off her lights and exiting her room swiftly into the dark pits of the hallway of the UA dormitories. If Bakugo didn't want to go with her, then she would have to go by herself. Her body walked her out of the commons and into the cold of night, having her start down the street where she spotted a convenience store while she was unloading the moving truck. She continued down the street until she had to press a button that allowed her to cross the street, which was not as busy. She crossed and headed towards the bright lights of the corner store, passing by the glass pumps that were empty. She walked in the store, hearing the chime of a bell above her. She gives the clerk a hello and continues into the store. She goes to the chip section of the store and picks out a bag of chips before she heads over to the refrigerators that were surprisingly fully stocked. 𝐻/N grabbed a bottle of water and continued browsing throughout the store to make sure there wasn't anything else she had wanted. She came across the candy aisle and her eyes widened to the variety of foreign candy that she had never seen before. She went down the aisle a little and looked, and before she starts to actually look for a pear-flavored snack, the girl notices someone else in the same aisle as her. And when she looked at him, they both made eye contact. She definitely knew him and he seemingly knew her. But from where? The eye contact lasted longer as she became mesmerized by the green eyes that she was looking into. She tilted her head to the right, the person standing in front of her accidentally doing the same. The boy standing in the same aisle suddenly steps back in surprise with widened eyes. "Oh." 𝐿/N, the boy said questioningly, looking her up and down, comprehending if he was thinking of the correct person. In his eyes, she looked the exact same. Those same big, bright eyes, the same hair that framed her face perfectly, the same aura. That's how he knew it was her. Although her skin tone was a tad bit darker, she got taller, and her hair was styled differently compared to when she was younger. Holy CRP. Midoriya. Gosh, I was wondering if that was actually you the other day. How long has it been? The boy walks closer to the girl with his items in his hands. I didn't even recognize you, Midoriya. You really have changed. She laughed, examining his features as she looked at him. He really did change. Last time 𝐻/N saw him, she was taller than him. Same here. When I saw you the other day, but I guess I didn't get that good of a look at you. He adds, giving her a smile. I'm guessing you got hungry too. Huh? She asks. He then points to her water and chips in her hand. Yeah, same with you. Yeah, I always get hungry at this time. And you've never gotten in trouble? If I get in trouble, I won't be able to do it anymore. I try and be discreet as possible. Todoroki has caught me a couple times, but he's not the type to tell Aizawa. Laughing, she turns back to aisle and picks up a chocolate bar. If you don't mind, I can pay for your stuff. He says, somewhat saying it as if it's a question. Oh no. That's okay, I don't want to be a bother. No, I insist. It's no big deal, I got you. He says, taking her items from her hand and bringing them up to the register to have the store clerk ring them up with his own items, also having their items put into a separate bag. Both Midoriya and 𝐻/N walk out of the store together. The boy hands the girl her separate bag, and she thanks him. Let's start heading back, it's getting kind of late, he said whilst checking his phone. A confirmational nod comes from the girl. They both start back to the UA dormitories for the night. The sunshine gleamed through her window, greeting her hello. Still in shock, she laid back down, dozing back to sleep, seeing as if it was early morning. Heart decoration. She left the train station having to walk 1 block in 20-degree weather, to have finally reached the where she could already see people entering the large building. Walking up to one of the nearest entrances that read, she nodded to the security guard who stood near the door, passing him to made her way through. Greeted by a warmer breeze, 𝐻/N pulled out a card from her bag, showing it to the second door security, giving him a subtle smile as she continued walking through the building. Walking down the lobby area, she took a left and walked down a dark hallway up to a door with a bright light shining from the crack of the door. 𝐻/N opening it to let herself through, she saw girls doing their makeup at vanities or getting dressed in front of mirrors, and others talking or discussing matters of their own business. Bonjour, bonjour. She greeted, hearing some, and, as she made her way through the large, semi-crowded room, going through another door that is in no vicinity to the first, she walked through. Going through that door, she came across a hall of elevators, clicking the arrow pointing up, watching it light up. Some moments later, the door opened up for you to see an empty, enclosed room. She stepped inside and pressed the number 6, watching as it too lit up. The door closed and the room started going up. She turned around to see that the other side of the elevator was built with large glass walls, giving her access to see other auditorium rooms with people on the stages, and some with no one on the stage, one with someone gaining a standing ovation, and one with someone still in the middle of their performance. The elevator came to a stop on the wrong floor, and the door opened to reveal a girl who appeared to be a year or two younger than, who would then walk into the same smaller room, and pressed level 9 on the keypad. Silence grew. The girl started taking band-aids off of her fingertips, keeping the bandages themselves in the fist of her hand. Do you play harp? Face with symbols on mouth : heart decoration. Face with symbols on mouth. Feeling. An ardor never got old. The blinding lights dimmed and she stepped to the backstage. Then, the girl grabbed her things and left the dressing room, headed to sit in a designated area in the audience. She sat in the audience for 2 more hours, watching as each contestant walked on and off the stage, paying close attention to each one of their performances. As time continues, it's time for awards to be passed out. Out of almost 40 contestants, only 10 were able to place with an exemption of Most Distinctive Solo. They called places 10th through 5th, having the winner walk onto the stage to collect their medals and smaller trophies. 𝐻/N still sat in her seat, her name staying uncalled. She sat in her seat clapping for other people that were called up upon the stage to gain their award. They smiled as they walked up and took the rewards from the man's hand. The speaker over a loudspeaker then announced 4th place individually, handing the winner a trophy, shaking the announcer's hand, him saying something inaudible to the rest of the room. 𝐻/N's name still not being called. Place 3rd, 2nd, and 1st were the last to be called. There were still over 30 people sitting in their seats in anticipation, hoping that their name would be called over the loudspeaker. 3rd place was called, S&D. The audience erupted into applause, and almost immediately a quiet scream was heard as a girl jumped out of her seat and scurried to the stage to claim her reward, giggling and not seeming to be able to stay still. She stayed with that beaming smile on her face when she walked from her seat, and when she made it back to her seat. Still smiling. 𝐻/N's name still being unheard. 2nd place was called, and then room was then filled with more claps and whistles from the crowd, and a boy silently stood up and walked to the stage, pumping his fist in the air while stepping up the steps to the stage, quickly stopping when he came into the bright lights, making a straight face as we went up to take his award, shaking the man's hand, and went back to his seat. 𝐻/N's name still being uncalled. Obviously, 1st place was the last place to be given out for the night, which also came with a appealing trophy with gold music notes and a gold violin standing tall in the middle of the stand, glimmering in the bright lights. The appealing gold reflecting off of 𝐻/N's eyes. Her eyes stared intently at the award on stage, her breathing becoming uneven. The man on stage then said, "And for our 1st place winner of tonight's violinist age group goes to..." The man stopped to read off the piece of paper that he was holding in his hand. He unfolded the piece of paper whilst holding the microphone up to his mouth to mouth. The room went silent, everyone in the room crossing their fingers, silently praying, holding someone else's hand. 𝐻/N holding her breathe. She closed her eyes and put both of her hands in her lap, relaxing her body. She released the breathe that she was holding in, and lifted her head and smiled. And for our 1st place winner of tonight's violinist age group goes to 𝐻/N. Congratulations. The entire room exploded into a large applause, 𝐻/N also getting a standing ovation. Whistles and screams were heard while a smile grew upon 𝐻/N's face. The man on stage picked up what seemed to be heavy trophy, placing the microphone and piece of paper onto the table that the trophy was put on. 𝐻/N got up from her seat, smiling as well. She walked up the aisle to head down to the stage. The girl walked up the steps, hit by the blinding lights, and dead from the applause that continued. She approached the man that stood center stage and gave him a handshake, bowing her head, telling him thank you. He congratulated her and handed her the trophy that he held in his hand previously. Her smile widened as many flashes of cameras went off, and she bowed towards the audience before taking her leave. The lights in the room brightened, and the stage lights dimmed as everyone in the area started leaving their seats, scattering like ants do socialize. Unlike 𝐻/N, she took her exit through the large doors in the back of room farthest from the stage. She was greeted by the harsh sunlight in her eyes, leaving her to adjust to the intense setting change. She walked down the hall and got congratulations and such. She said thank you many times, and also told many congratulations as well. And with that, she caught an elevator down to the 1st floor, and left through the glass doors that she came through and headed down to the train station to have the ability to put the large trophy in the empty seat next to her to give her arms a rest because she got off at the closest stop to 𝐭𝐻 examined and complimented the trophy that sat on the ground next to her feet. 𝐻/N told both 𝐻𝑨 and 𝐿𝐴CHIKO about her day and how she won the competition she attended. They congratulated her and told her how impressive that was. Bakugo came up to the small group of girls and picked up the trophy that sat on the ground and carried it to corresponding Hit's room. Hearing her slide a thank you, he rolled his eyes and started towards the dormitory hall. The girls walked away from the door to be greeted by a familiar yellow-haired boy. "You know, I like a first-place kind of girl. I'm Denki Kaminari, je suis ravi de vous rencontrer." The boy grabbed the confused girl's hand, kissing it, creating a questionable look from her and both of her classmates. She then had this smug grin appear onto her face when she said, "Je suis ravi de vous rencontrer également. Comment avez-vous dit que votre nom était encore?" She looked him directly into his eyes when he lifted his head to meet her piercing gaze. He hesitated, looking away from her eyes before stuttering, before looking at her in a confused look also. 𝐻𝑨 hit her forehead with the palm of her hand, shaking her head in pure embarrassment, and 𝐿𝐴CHIKO giggling, holding her stomach. 𝐻/N laughed as well. "And I was about to say you weren't cute." Patting his head. "I'm pretty tired. It feels like I've been up forever. I'll come back down later." Turning to 𝐻𝑨 and 𝐿𝐴CHIKO, before she walked away towards her quarters. Kaminari walked back to his seat on the coach feeling rejected. "You have absolutely no riz," Suro spat, making Denki groan and sink into the comforts of the couch. To think that this was the type of training and instruction that she would be getting. 𝐻/N never thought that she was the athletic type. Even though she has a very powerful quirk, she never brought out the true power of it. It constantly stayed to a minimal. Her quirk helped her with simple everyday things. Instead of actually sweeping, she would mentally pick it up and sweep all of the filth from the floor. Instead of taking her hands of the bow to flip the page, she would use her quirk to flip it. Did she happen to forget her phone all the way on the other side of the room? No worries. It would easily start floating, and floating until it reached the palm of her hand. Was she lazy? No, of course not. She just used her quirk as an of herself, even though she wasn't using it for what the hero world would call useful purposes. She was using her quirk for her own useful purposes. And she was okay with that. If she wanted to expand her quirk earlier, she wouldn't have enrolled in an arts program, and her quirk wasn't something she wanted to enlarge back then. She was scared of draining herself more, maybe even hurt her body more than it's already hurting. She knew that her quirk was extremely dangerous. But she never knew dangerous. Growing up with her aunt, she told her to keep it to that minimal so that she wouldn't hurt herself and others around her. She was somewhat trained her to fear her quirk. Whenever her aunt saw her concentrating extremely hard, she would immediately stop her from trying to lift or move whoever object was glowing. She was jealous of all the other kids being able to freely use her quirk at recess while she had to be the odd one out. Sometimes she felt the girl's quirk was more than intriguing. Most people who met her were most definitely interested to know more. Hell, she wasn't even able to tell them because she didn't even know herself. But now everything was different. She was older, able to make her own decisions, and most importantly she was now going to UA, a school for upcoming young heroes. They located her all the way from France just to give her an opportunity to learn and train at such a school. She had gotten multiple scholarships to other schools as well. Some who wanted her to take part in their young hero programs and arts program too. But there's only so much you can know about the art of violin playing. 𝐻/N was only in high school and had learned, not everything but about everything there is to know about most musical instruments, the history, techniques, and most things you can name. She would need to advance to college to finally be able to challenge herself and learn more about the art of violin playing. Last year the art program at the prestigious school had come to an end. She planned on going to a new school next year and get her degree in psychiatry. So if her current career of playing music starts to fall downhill, she would have something else she would want to do. Now she was in UA, a hero school, where she would take this to great opportunity to learn more about her quirk and use it like she's always wanted to and possibly become a hero. She never wanted to be about her own quirk again. and training at UA is going to get her exactly where she wants to be. So instead of just playing around to see how much she could lift at a time, she could get expert help from the teachers and train like a real hero would. Their slightly strange friend Yuga, who started a conversation with them as she was walking to class. Soon, 𝐻/N was lost in her own train in thought. Walking into her next class, she saw an almost empty classroom. Sunlight glistening through the class windows. A body was under a desk, presumably looking for something. 𝐻/N stood there for a moment before taking a step inside the classroom. The person froze, making the French student stop as well. Whoever was under the desk started scrambling to get from under the desk, resulting in them hitting their head. Following with a feminine shriek of "ow!" A girl quickly came from their previous position and stood up looking towards her. 𝐿/N, you scared me. Achiko says as her cheek became red, and she was filled with embarrassment. 𝐻/N looked her in a confused manner. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. What are you doing under the desk? 𝐻/N laughed a little, walking up the brunette who was fixing her clothes. Well, dragging out her word, I was looking for a note I left here. You know, boy stuff? She giggled and winked at her. I was told the boy I'm trying to get it to wasn't in here last PRD. I'm trying to find it before someone else does, but I'm afraid I'm a bit too late, she openly explained. Oh, 𝐿/N started. I'm sorry to hear that. Was it something important? She asked in a concerned manner, bending over a little to see if she spotted the note she was talking about. No, not particularly. There's nothing I can do about it now, can I? More students started entering the class mindlessly as their conversation continued. Well, I got to run. If you see the note, pass it to me in homeroom tomorrow. So it. And out the door she went, waving to her classmate. 𝐻/N staring at her classmate in confusion, waving goodbye, laughing, still processing what she had just ran across. She snapped out of her daze, and when the bell rang, and instead of heading to her next class, 𝐻/N was walking to Mr. Aizawa's office. She knocked on his door to hear a quiet come in from the other side of the door. She walked in and thanked him for seeing her during his planning PRD. No problem, 𝐿/N. Take a seat anywhere. He sat at a desk typing in his computer before turning his attention to 𝐻/N. She took a seat on the one of two couches that sat in the middle of his room. She excitingly tapped her feet on the ground and fiddled with her fingers as she looked around the room, assessing every detail of his office. So 𝐿/N, gaining her attention, he sits across from her on the other identical couch. I was wondering what you actually know about this quirk of yours. Well, she thought carefully before answering his question, finding it harder than she originally thought it was. I know that I can move things and make them float. She paused, thinking before continuing. I also know that whenever I move those things, they light up in this purple aura. That's good. Do you know where this energy is generated from? She nodded her head no. To what measures do you know your powers can exceed to? Never really tried to find out. Have there been any major incidents where your quirk caused you to hurt someone by accident? No one other than myself. Do you know if your quirk could be triggered by your emotions? Possibly. Can you only control your quirk within your thoughts? Maybe through my hands. Do people consider your quirk dangerous? No one has ever really seen it firsthand. You were born with your quirk, correct? Pretty sure. About how many pounds can you lift using your quirk? Have you ever seen someone with a quirk similar to yours? Not that I know of. You seem unsure of yourself. It's because I am. Looking away from her, he pursed his lips and thought. She was completely clueless about her own quirk. Most parents tried to let their children embrace their quirks, but this was completely different. She answered as if she had never even used it before. He poked his tongue into his cheek as he had an idea and thought that it would benefit both of them. Have a student that has the same trouble in his first year. And I think that you training and working with him would be a great help. You would do better working with someone younger than me since you both can relate. You know Midoriya, right? He's in our homeroom class. Oh yes. I know him. We've met. I want you to work with him. I'll give him a list of things for him to do, but training-wise you can work with another one of our teachers. They continued talking, 𝐻/N excited that she was actually doing this. She smiled, nodding at everything he said, and thanked him many times before she left him office to attend the rest of her classes. From her phone. A notification from 𝘠𝑒𝑘𝑢. Face with symbols on mouth : heart decoration face with symbols on mouth WTV, you know that I'm right. 𝐻/N put her phone and picked up her instrument and continued her playing around, letting it be the only thing that occupied her mind and room for the next couple hours of her free time. "Oh sure, are you okay?" the green-haired boy yelled from his window across from hers. "No yet. Just fine." Agitated and somewhat hurt, she sat back up, continuing to rub the back of her head, finally looking back out the open window she once sat. "I didn't mean to scare you. I just happened to catch your window open." A simply hi would have been a better greeting than making me fall on my butt. 𝐻/N laughed as she sat back onto her window looking back at him. "Oh, I'm sorry." Straightening his posture in his chair. "I didn't mean to be rude." No. It's okay, I'm just a jumpy person." She looked to her knees, tapping them as the silence drew. Midoriya cleared his throat. "So, Aizawa said we're working together for a little while. He said that you don't have much experience with your quirk." The girl's face tensed and she shifted her position. "I'm excited to start working and stuff. I never really got to do this, so I'm going to put my best effort forth." "That's good. I'm glad doing this is exciting you. Mr. Aizawa never gave me this kind of job before, so I'm excited too." Izuku trailed off, looking back at 𝐻/N as she stared at him intently. "Is there something on my face? You look so familiar, but I just know where I know you from." "Seriously? You almost immediately knew my name at the convenience store, and you're telling me that you still don't remember me?" 𝐻/N tired her head to left and nodded her head no. "Elementary school. Me, you, and Kaken were all in the same class. We used to play together at that community park, and you played violin and I played piano." "Like Izuku Midoriya." "That's me." Smiling, her put his pencil down and look out his window. "I feel kind of dumb now. Labant, it's been so long. I'm so sorry. Wow." "Wait, what?" Midoriya had a set-back look on his face. "The Midoriya I know, he didn't know a quirk didn't. The Midoriya you know and the you knew now has a quirk. I'm officially the one for all successor." Days progress and many days pass. 𝐻/N has been in and out of competitions. While being able to easily keep up with her workload is a bit overwhelming, but she hates the thought of procrastination. Easily her grades stay up. Midoriya, under Mr. Aizawa's word, had instructed him to start working with 𝐻/N to get her started with quirk training, and he had been so antsy to find out more about this so powerful quirk that Mr. Aizawa has told him about. To try and get her more comfortable with it, Midoriya has asked her to multiple of their training sessions, also skin Achiko to accompany her, so she would not feel as uncomfortable and out of place. 𝐻/N's conversation went well. All Might was apparently a very skinny man who dressed in a suit. But, aside from that, he was very nice and understanding. He asked her many questions and asked for a small demonstration of her power. She answered his questions, liking the undivided attention they were giving her to figure out the best ways to help her. There was also a very stuck woman with purple hair who was present in the room as well, asking questions and writing down small notes on a clipboard, making it kind of feel like an interview. 𝐻/N thanked her teachers and continued on with her day, feeling better than she did before. After a long school day, walking back to the dormitories, 𝐻/N heard her name coming from behind her. She turned around to see a happy green-headed boy jogging up next to her. "Hey L/N. What happened today? I didn't see you during training at all." "Oh, Mr. Aizawa told me to sit today out. He wanted some other teachers wanted to talk to me about my quirk and stuff. They wanted to have a better understanding of what I could do. Nothing too speciale." "What, really? I didn't know." "Well, I know you're probably tired of answering questions today, but I was wondering if you would be willing to answer some of mine. I would be really interested in hearing about it. If you wouldn't mind. That is." He asked her, biting his lip in embarrassment. "Yeah, of course. I wouldn't mind." She smiled, looking at his face light up. "We can go to my room if you're comfortable. It's just a lot of unfinished paperwork and things scattered in there." "Yeah, of course. I'll go get my notebook. I left it in my dorm this morning. I'll be right back." and he raced to his room to make sure 𝐻/N was not waiting on him. The girl laughed and started to her room. "Play piano, Midoriya," she asked whilst handing him a pencil, gaining his attention. He grabbed the pencil from her hand and watched as she walked away and sat on her bed, with him taking a seat in her desk chair. "Yeah, I did. Do you still play?" she eyeing him in curiosity as he got comfortable in his seat. "No, I don't." "Oh." 𝐻/N replied with casualty. Midoriya scrambled through his notebook to find an empty page while 𝐻/N got back up and went over to her record player and placed a record on top, letting it start playing as she sat on her bed looking around as if she had never been in it before, waiting for him to start their interview. The sun began to set, letting the sky reveal its appealing stars above, looking down on whatever was below it. Midoriya found a page in his book, and then continued to look up at her. "Are you ready to start?" "Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was just dash," he cleared his throat. "So what's your quirk again? I don't think you ever told me." I don't really know. I guess it's kind of like the telekinesis superpower that you've seen in American TV." He wrote something down. "So, do you know how strong it can get?" "Well, I'm not very sure. I've never used it for anything other than trivial stuff. That's all," she explained, crossing her legs as she sat on her bed. He said, "How does it work? How does it work?" she asked in repetition, him nodding eagerly in response. "Well, I think about what I'm trying to move and it just happens, I guess. It's hard to explain." "I'm sorry." Nervously laughing, she looked up to the boy sitting at her desk. "Oh, okay, but do you know how to explain how your quirk?" the boy asked again. "I guess not. It's very confusing to me as it is, sorry." His face quickly changed into a disappointing expression as if he was unsatisfied with her answer. "It's okay. I understand." She sighed, looking towards her record player. Her eyes then light up with an idea. 𝐻/N's face grew into a smile in realization of what he meant by his question. Looking back at him, she motioned for his presence. "Sit here," patting a spot on her bed next to where she was previously sitting. 𝐻/N got up from her seat, jogging towards her light SW, flicking it off. She then grabbed a random mechanical pencil from her desk, making sure that she doesn't trip, keeping note that the only light in the room in that moment was from the streetlights that brightened the roads below her dorm. 𝐻/N sat back down in her bed, telling Izuku to face her direction. The girl placed the pencil in her hands, letting it rest upon her palms, watching as her classmate observed her every movement. A purple glow started emitting from her hands, progressively getting brighter and brighter. The pencil started to rise from her hands, hovering over them. 𝐻/N removed one of her hands from the bottom of the floating pencil and started to make a revolving motion around it, making the pencil rotate before Midoriya's eyes. He watched in utter awe, gazing upon her quirk presentation in front of him. She stopped the rotating motion of her hand and started making the pencil lift above both of their heads, her palms still letting off a purple glow, as well as the pencil. Midoriya looking into her hands, he lifted his and began to caress her palms gingerly, taking in the softness of her hands and the tingling sensation that began to occur in his fingertips, leading onto his whole palm. 𝐻/N looked at him, watching his every move that he made due to his curiosity. His big, alluring, green eyes sparkling a appealing purple color due to the glow that was emitting from her hands. His fingertips turned into his full palms, grazing hers. Moments after, his whole body that was previously sitting on 𝐻/N's bed began lifting over the mattress. The boy tensed up in shock of the sudden movements, his nerves settled over, and a smile starts to grow onto his freckled face. Midoriya continued with looking at her and the pencil. It seemed as the young boy had never seen anything like it in his life. The pencil starts rising higher into the air above both of their heads. 𝐻/N, with her eyes closed, everything in her room started lifting from the ground. 𝐻/N getting so caught up in the music she was unaware of what she doing. Her hands now holding her ankles, making her figure levitate over her bed. Midoriya looked in awe, gazing at her, the pencil, himself, and scanned the room as everything around him had all started levitating. They both sat in silence, nothing else needing to be said. The levitating boy stops looking at the pencil to look at the girl that sat in front of him, his gaze softening, while watching her, admiring her. I mean, she was the epitome of interesting. And this only added to his opinion on her. She really was. The song on the record play stopped and the girl's eyes shot open, having everything in the room hit the floor, the pencil hitting the bed, Midoriya and 𝐻/N sitting back onto the bed. Down to hover back over her palms again, hearing Midoriya clear his throat. 𝐻/N, he said, letting his focus from the pencil immediately leave so that his focus would be on her. And you say that you can only use your quirk for small things. Did you see what you just did? I didn't think you seeing a floating pencil would leave you so impressed. No. It's not just the pencil. It was everything. Everything like what? While she spoke, the pencil then flew to the other side of the room, to her desk and landed into her pencil holder, the glow from her pencil, and hands slowing disappearing. Like the pencil, everything in your room? You just made every ounce of gravity leave the room in a second. Oh my gosh. I have so many questions. Do you think I can ask you more questions? Like, how does it make your hands feel when you're using your quirk? Does it hurt? He rambled, asking any and all questions that came to his mind. And 𝐻/N full-heartedly listened to every single question and answered each and every one without hesitation. It's open, 𝐻/N said to the unknown person who knocked at her door. Katsuki walks in, bag of chips in hand and spread out across her bed as it's his own, leaving the door wide open. I don't like eating on my 𝐵, being interrupted by a yellow-haired boy waltzing into her room, followed by Mina skipping in as well. Hi 𝐿/N. How are you? Mina, dragging out her as she gave 𝐻/N a hug and sat in her desk chair. Your room is so cute, I love it. Looking around the foreign space. I've been well, thank you, Mina. How have you been? She asked in response. I've been fine, nothing -- she was interrupted by 𝐻/N yelling, "Catcha," bluntly. What? He yelled. She slapped him on his head and took his chips and threw them away. I told you I don't like eating on my bed, you absolute idiot. Turning back around to Ishido, she continued. How have you been? I've been good. Thank you for asking, really. Me and the girls are thinking about going out tonight. Want to come? Asking, excited. Where are you all thinking about going? Maybe the arcade or the mall. Who knows? Momo has a car, so we're pretty much going anywhere we can get. She giggled. That sounds fun. Sure, why not? I don't have anything to do. Of course. And also, Kaminari wanted to -- looking back to where the yellow-haired boy would have been. Oh well, I guess he's gone now. Concluding her statement. She then said, I'll get going now, here's my number, I'll text you the deets. See you later. And walked out of the door. Mina's so sweet. 𝐻/N said. Yeah, whatever. Come on, let's go. 𝐻/N dragged, grabbing her jacket and a hat, and started out the door. Go where? Bakugo said, raising his voice so she could hear him. To your mom's. And continued down the hall. Turn off my lights and shut the door, and started down the sidewalk in the chilly air. Soon, having 𝐻/N following behind him. She walked from the train station with Bakugo back to UA, until they parted at Bakugo's dorm, telling him good night, knowing that he was on the path to slumber. She continued down into the dimly lit hallway of the quarters to her room so that she could get her purse and text Mina so that she could get ready to go to the wherever they were going. She kept up with her pace until she felt an Era presence walking with her. All of a sudden the hallway got unnaturally cold. She whipped her head around to see nothing but the darkness that crept down the hall. Her breath hitched and became extremely unsteady. She turned back around, continuing her stride back to her room nervously and walking with slightly more speed that she usually has. The presence seemingly proceeding to linger as she heard a very faint warm-up. They both ran 2 laps around the track field, 10 suicides, 100 sit-ups each, 50 push-ups, and 50 squats. Alright, let's get started. Enthusiastically, Midoriya swung his arms around he did a light bounce on the toes of his feet. Not even high school volleyball would have prepared me for this 𝐻𝑇, Midoriya. You played volleyball? for a second until my aunt pulled me. Whoa, that's cool, I didn't know you played sports. They both walked inside the indoor gym where they had multiple heights of rock and other training equipment. Yeah, I like a change in pace sometimes. Taking a big huff of breath in. So what first, all for one successor. Holding her hands behind her head, still catching her breath. Hopefully not something that will make me pass out. Wait, you might pass out? He stops walking and turns to her, looking at her relaxed expression, acting as if what she just said was normal. Well, maybe. Laughing and walking past the green-haired boy, she let her arms fall down, and she stretched them over each other before putting them to rest at her side. I think you should just kind of try lifting things. With your quirk. I'm not that strong with my quirk, Have you even tried lifting anything heavier? Well, no. Then how do you know? Exactly. The boy who stood next to her jogged over to the large storage room and rolled out a weighted barrel farther into the gym. Come on, L/N, don't let the boy carrying the heavy stuff go faster than you. And with that, Y/N starting running towards him and then passed him up whilst turning a sharp corner. L/N, I asked you if you were able to lift heavy stuff and you told me no. Why, yeah, well, I didn't know. Plus this is still kind of hard, you know? Y/N stood struggling, her arms straining, veins popping from her arms, her also shaking, she biting her lip hard enough for it to draw BLD as she stood trying to hold the 3 barrels into the air while making them moving around, on top of, and under each other due to Midoriya command. Seems like you're doing it with ease to me. Well, it was easy when you only gave me barrel. She screamed at him, breaking a sweat across her forehead. Do you think you can only do it with one hand? Maybe we should try adding another barrel. Do you think you can dash? It's really hard to concentrate when you're still talking to me. Yelling in irritation, he took the hint and hummed. She yelled again in what seemed to be pain and anger right before she slammed the barrels onto the ground. She turned around and then walked away from the barrels a few steps before turning back around to face them again. You're getting better, L/N. I didn't know you had this much mental, physical strength and resilience. He walked up the girl whose hands were on her knees, heavily breathing, and rubbed her back. This is what you do every time you guys go to those training sessions? Well, I kind of work my quirk some other different ways, and me and the others sometimes do small quirk brawls. I don't even want to know what that is. Izuku laughed, and Y/N leaned up and stood up straight. Well, even if you don't come with us to train, I still want you to work on your own, and do some of the similar things that we've been working on since we've been here. What are you doing? Midoriya yelled as he witnessed Y/N take off her shirt in quick motion. What? God, it's not like I'm naked. I'm in my sports 𝐵. She threw her shirt off to the side. So what next? Turning back to him as this pink blush appeared onto his face while he tried not to look at her. He thought before he spoke. I think that you should work on steadiness and precision in your hands, so that the things you're moving moves with exactness and accuracy. She hummed and stretched her over each other, walking to the near bench to pick up her water bottle. How do you know so much about how to train quirk? Well, a component of my quirk is somewhat similar to yours. I've been doing the same training as you to train with it. She hummed and walked away from the bench, placing her water bottle back. Y/N walked back to the center of the room with Midoriya where he stood. All right then. Precision training. Time went on, and the sun started to set and the stars started to rise. The air got chiller and the wind blew through the trees. Y/N and Midoriya finally started heading back to the dorms in the cold breeze of the arriving night. Eventually, the two made it back to the building, saying their goodbyes before they finally retiring back to their rooms to rest for the night. Always do, with that strange presence still following her. She would most feel it when she was alone, and when she plays violin, causing her to constantly have to stop to catch her breath. She hated it. She wanted whoever it was, whatever it is, to stop and leave her alone. It was a major distraction. Y/N bought noise-canceling headphones from the mall to try and see if this would fix her problem. It did. But Y/N has to hear herself when she plays, meaning that she cannot wear the headphones when she is playing violin, making whatever it is come back. Do you think I'm going crazy? No, of course not, L/N, her therapist told her. It may be just a figment of your imagination. don't you think? Oh, nothing like this has happened before. And I'm not on edge to be imagining ghost, she said with a distracted look on her face. Do you think I need to talk to a medium? Oh no. Of course not, Han, I don't think a medium would be able to help with this kind of problem either way. You're not even sure if it's a ghost or not. It may just be something your mind has been making up. She sighed in defeat, and just accepted what the doctor had said and continued their session. She then snaps out of the trance. She fixed her posture, and then walked back into the bathroom to change out of the dress gently and puts her past clothes back on to go and sit back in the room to continue chatting about the trivial with the people that are sitting in her room with the now titled The Knock turned into a beat, and that beat turned into beats, finally catching 𝐻/N's attention. Go away, Katja, I want to be alone, the girl said, dragging out her alone in a very playful tone. Hey, it's Izuku, but if you don't want to talk, I can totally come back later. Sorry to disturb you, the boy behind the door blabbed, and started walking back to the commons. Before he got a chance to take another step, the music turned off, and the door swung open. Hi Midoriya. You can come in. Sorry about that, me and Katja got into another argument over something dumb. She spoke quickly. You can come in. She moved aside to let him pass through her doorway, very curious on why he so unexpectedly showed up to her room. She closed the door behind her and watched him sit on the floor next to her bed. Then before she sat in front of him, she turned her record player back on, but turned back the volume. So what's up? Well, he started, you remember the other day when you asked me if I was still playing piano? Yeah. Well, I kind of think I want to start playing again. I don't really have any hobbies outside of trainings and stuff, so I thought this would be good for me. I kind of wanted to know if there was some place where I can take lessons or something that can teach me. There's a free piano in the music department and I can use it outside of school hours. Midoriya explains, looking off to the side when her hears a scream. Oh my gosh. You want to start playing piano again? I'm probably even more excited than you are. She cleared her throat. You, Midoriya, came to the right person at the right time and the right place. Is that so? It is so. I am a woman of many different natures, if you could not tell. And I know a little something about piano. You know how to play piano? Well, when you've been to some of the most prestigious art schools in your country, they're going to teach you about more than your instrument. So you can teach me. I can teach you the basics. But I don't really think you need to be taught again. You just kind of need a reminder of some things. I think you'll catch back on quickly. I don't know, it's been a while. But you want to start playing again, right? I mean, yeah, if you didn't really want to start playing again, then you wouldn't put in the effort. Midoriya sighed in thought, taking what she said into his mind, so that he could remember it. How about this? One day, we can go by the music room and just play around a little and see how you like it. Yeah, sure. That sounds great. Well, instead, how about this? 𝐻/N got up from her spot and made her way towards her desk and opened up her laptop, putting in the passcode. She searched through her emails and inbox until she scrolled upon an online invitation that was sent from the Music Organization Bureau. She clicked on it and zoomed in on the image and pushed her feet so that her chair could roll out of the way so that Midoriya could see her laptop screen. Upon the screen showed the invitation that was sent by her music teacher back in France. I was invited to the annual orchestra gala. I think you should come with me, Midoriya. He stared blankly, hypnotized by the screen. He got up from his sitting position and walked towards the computer to further inspect it. He stood there, with an empty but meaningful gaze. You want to come with? He continued, looking at the screen of her computer with his head tilted. Yeah, why not? I feel it would further your curiosity. It says that I'm allowed to bring a +1, and Katja doesn't like these type of things. 𝐻/N answered, smiling at him. Izuku then comes back into reality, gasps, and jumps back. You want to come to the gala with? That's what I said. Don't you have much more talented friends to go with? I'm pretty sure they're all already invited. I don't want it to seem like you're dragging along a total stranger with you when we get there. Oh, don't be ridiculous, Midoriya. We've known each other for more than a few years now. We aren't strangers, we hang out and talk almost every day. Does that not consider a friends? Yeah, but, her sighed, sitting on her bed. I don't want to feel like a burden. Like, what if I get super awkward and then start rambling, and what if there's nothing for me to say? And then I'll get even more awkward because I won't know what everyone else will be talking about. And what if I relax? I'm not forcing you to go or anything. Just think about it. You might enjoy it. She got up from her desk after closing out the invitation tab and grabbed her phone. I'll send you the information just in case you're interested in going. Like I said, no pressure. Just a thought. And she walked up to him while sending him the details. I feel like I would be out of place. Just because it isn't some hero convention. Come on. You need to live your life and not dedicate it to only one thing. You're a human. You're allowed to want to do other things. Yeah, I know, but nothing, Midoriya. I understand that you want to be a hero and that's okay too. But it's okay to leave your comfort zone and try things. Shrugging her shoulders, and rubbed Midoriya's arm as he looked troubled by his own thoughts. No need to stress over it, like I said. If you don't want to go, just say so. You're not hurting my feelings. Thank you, L/N. I'll definitely think about it. My pleasure. Looking up at him, she stopped. Y/N stood looking into his bright green eyes, her hands still on his arm. Him staring right back. They both stood, staring at each other, their presence feeling so close. Gazes becoming so addicting that it was almost hard to stop. As she looked at him, she realized how pretty he was. His messy green hair, his tall muscular physique, his Y/N felt her breath get heavier as she continued to gaze into his eyes, as she thought, whoa, catching herself, not knowing what came over herself. She shook herself back to reality. I have a lot of work and research I need to catch up on. You have my phone number, and I will send you the, information. Y/N stuttered, without making eye contact. She walked away and walked to her door to walk him out. I'll think about it, thank you for asking me. Yeah, of course. There was a moment of eye contact, and an even longer moment of an awkward silence. Take care, L/N, I'll catch you later. Izuku said somewhat nervously, and avoiding eye contact again. He walked to the door and nodded a thank you as she opened the door him, and then he walked out the room, heading silent a couple seconds after he stepped out of the room completely. You too, she said before releasing a huge portion of air that had been trapped in her lungs for quite some time. She closed her door, and ran to her bed and flopped down, with what seemed to be butterflies still in her stomach. She let out another huff of air and started kicking her feet and rolling in her bed. Students went about their business happily. Nothing out of the ordinary. Today was a makeup/free day for the students to play catch up and relax before they had to return to normal classes the next day. Y/N sat at her desk in an empty classroom, mindlessly daydreaming and playing a game on her phone. Most students were out roaming in the courtyard conversing, students tutoring other students, teachers tutoring students, some more were in the library, and every now and then a few kids would walk in and out the cafeteria. A slow, relaxing day, one of the student body's favorite days at that. Y/N sat in the room clearing the level in her game, about to click on the next level when she heard a knock from her ear that wasn't occupied by one side of her headphones. She looked up to see someone's clenched fist ghosting the door, while they stood in the doorway. May I come in, Ms. L/N? Teasingly, Midoriya stood in the doorway of the class smiling at her, then looking around the classroom to see that she was the only one student present. Y/N rolled her eyes playfully. Hi, Midoriya, she said, bringing her attention back to her phone. The boy walks into the class away from the door, and walked up to a chair that was in front of the desk that Y/N was seated at, pulled it out, and sat backwards in it to face her. Why are you in here all alone? Asking genuinely, while peeping over and looking into Y/N's phone to see what she was doing. Besides looking all depressed. Nothing really. I'm just sitting in here. Answering his question, she continued to play her game, paying him little to no attention. Midoriya hummed and looked around aimlessly. You remember the other day when you told me you'd teach me the basics and stuff of piano? Her main focus still on her game. I mean, I'm not doing anything, you're basically not doing anything, you mind teaching me now? Now, she repeated. I mean, it is a catch-up day. Why not L/N? I'm assuming you don't have any assignments you need to do. 𝘵𝑗𝑎 looked at her, and saw her eyebrows furrow as she mumbled under her breath before turning off her phone and looking up at the boy who sat in front of her. Why not dash? Before she could even finish her sentence, she was pulled out of her chair. All right then, 𝘵𝑗𝑎 said while he dragged 𝐻/N out of the classroom and into the hall. Violin, call me Izuku, if you want. You know that those are good for you. She sighed. You absolutely to be taking 2 in the morning and 2 before you go to sleep. I try. I just forget often. Just keep them in your bathroom. Take 2 when you're brushing your teeth in the morning and take 2 more when you get out of the shower at night. Yeah, I know. She put her elbow on the armrest and her head on her hand, sighing loudly. The doctor sat back in her chair and rolled it closer to 𝑌/N sitting in hers. She checked her eyes, her ears, her mouth, and she was now checking her heartbeat. So, how's school been going? Met any friends? Yeah. The kids are really friendly, she said as she sat super still as she took a deep breath in. Met any boys yet? The doctor asked, suggestively raising her eyebrows teasingly. The doctor moves the stethoscope around her chest and back, being very quiet and listening very closely. Hold on, what's wrong L/N? In a panicked tone as she looked in her face to see it was somewhat red and that she completely froze. Her heartbeat started going faster when she playfully asked the question, only one person coming to mind. Of course he wasn't that kind of boy, so there was no reason for her to get worked up over it, right? Maybe it just made her flustered because the first person she thought of was him. Nope. No boys. Stating quickly whilst looking everywhere but the doctor. She mumbled in her breath, yeah right? And took her stethoscope from her chest, hanging it back around her neck. All right, let's check your BLD pressure. She said her goodbyes to the doctor and walked out of the office in the rain. She took out her umbrella and started walking to the train station so that she could head to the PhD clinic located along a strip. It was now 8:33 and the rain didn't show any signs of lightening up. 𝑌/N then got onto the train and stood, hanging onto a handle that was attached to the ceiling of the train, leaving in empty seats to the ones who needed them. The train was mostly empty, with the exception of other passengers in the train cars in front of hers, and the people leaving the train as she got on. The doors closed, and she was left in the train car alone, which was somewhat out of the ordinary since it was early in the morning. An automatic takeoff announcement began to play overhead in the speaker as the bright lights began to dim. She notices that no one was in the car with her, and decided to sit in the seat closest to her. Pulling out her phone, she started scrolling on social media, playing games, and watching videos. It was a short ride before she got to the strip. She sat peacefully in her seat looking down at her phone playing. She felt like the train was shaking, or maybe it was her. Yes, her whole body was shaken, and was petrified and didn't know what to do or think. She couldn't think of anything to say. Everything stopped. The train, the lights, the pads. Everything. The announcement went off thanking the current passengers for choosing this train, and greeting the incoming passengers with a few minor rules and procedures. The doors opened and this train stop was still mostly empty. 𝑌/N stopped and took a minute to process, and when she did, she grabbed her phone and her purse from the floor and ran off that train, being at that very train station for less than a few minutes. Stopping to catch her breath, she thought about what happened in the train. She continued to walk when she realized that there was no more hood for her to walk under, coming that the realization that she was getting rained on. Clutching her fist whilst screaming in irritation, aggravation, and still a little bit of panic. She had left her umbrella. Think I'm crazy? She started getting angry, seeming as if her pot was about to flood over. She needed to stop hanging around her short-tempered friend so often. He sat his phone down and finished chewing his food. I'm not saying that you're crazy 𝑌/N. I'm just saying that something may have scared you and made your quirk go haywire. I don't exactly know what you want me to say after you've told me the story. Congratulations. I with you. Rubbing her temples, she sat in his desk chair. No, I'm being deadass. You've told me your story, cool. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry that you got scared, and I'm sorry that you didn't get the last vinyl. Now what do you want me to say? She choked on her words, and went quiet thinking about what he said. And he was right. There wasn't anything to necessarily say. She needed no advice on the story whatsoever, and she would be more enraged if he gave any more input. I guess you're right. Rolling her eyes, she kicked around in the chair to turn away from him, hearing a subtle exactly coming from his way. 𝐻/N rolled her eyes as she got a notification from her phone. Picking it up, clicking on it, and opened the message from a very particular green-haired boy. Izuku Midoriya man superhero, we did quirk training Monday, you down for some piano practice? 𝐻/N spun around in the chair, turning back around, smiling and poking her lip with her nail as she typed a response back quickly before putting her phone back down on the desk, her small giggle and smile gaining the attention her blonde friend. Why the F are you smiling like that? A girl can't smile at her phone. A girl doesn't smile at her phone like unless someone she'd texted her. She span around in the chair giggling and getting a little dizzy. And maybe someone did. And who's texting you like that? It better not be 𝐿 No, dragging out her word, she continued spinning around in the chair, not noticing that Katsuki had put his feet on the floor, still sitting on his bed, putting his chips to the side. Then who's texting you? Midoriya, the DMN nerd. Bakugo exclaimed, jolting up. He's so sweet, Katya. It's, why don't you like him? Because it's Deku. Well, it's not like I like him or that we're going out or anything, so what's the big issue? Don't like him, my butt? He let his head hit his bed and lay sprawled across his bed in irritation and distress. Katya. She rolled her eyes, don't me? He rolled over and faced away from her. What is he texting you for? 𝐻/N? He wants me to help teach him piano. You're teaching him piano. Interrupting and jolting back up and looking towards her. Oh come on, it's not that big of a deal. She rolled her eyes once more and scoffed. You just want to get on my nerves, 𝐻/N, mumbling lowly and facing her back towards the boys so that he couldn't hear her while she muttered, I also invited him to the gala. You invited him to the gala. I didn't even say anything. Yes you did. No I didn't. I heard you dragged out her words and dragging her hands down her face as well. He didn't say if he wanted to go or Nodi just asked him if he would like to come with me since he wanted to start learning piano again. You just had to ask, it's not like you volunteered to go. You're right, I didn't. And I don't want to either. Now I think about it, I take that back, you talked to Kaminari. You're not going to sit here and tell what to do. Do whatever then. Plopping back on his bed. I already planned on it. She started collecting her things and starting to get up and walk towards the door. And where are you going, 𝐻/N? Bakugo said, acting as if he was some sort of parental authority, crossing his arms, sitting up again. Don't be coy, you know exactly where I'm going. And with that, she rolled her eyes and left him room with a of the doorknob. Sometimes things don't change as much. She raised her eyebrow in question, looking at him and the piano to see what he apparently did wrong. His left hand standing at the far left of the piano, and the far right staying abandoned. His right hand at his side, clutched in a ball. They stared at each other, making conversation in eye contact. She shook her head in confusion and he just made this small embarrassing smile as she looked towards the other side of the piano, still signaling and asking for her help. She laughed and walked around the piano and sat next to him on the bench. 𝐻/N turned to look at him in the eyes. Tell me, what don't you know? I just don't know what do next. Getting nervous, he moves back a little. So, is it that you don't know this? The girl put her hands on the keys of the right side of the piano and played what Midoriya was supposed to play after he finished the first segment of the arrangement, seeing his face change into a smile, about to say something before he was interrupted because she did not stop playing. But you know this. She kept going, beginning to play a recognizable series of different notes that made the boy's face fall again. She kept up with her pace and then immediately stopped when a hand on hers stopped it from reaching other to the next note. He laughed and hung his head. I thought you didn't know that much about piano, 𝐿/N, looking back up to her. I could say the same thing, Izuku. She got up from the bench and went back around the piano. I see you come in here for a couple minutes after school, and you've gotten a lot better. I'm proud of you. You've really improved a lot. Why do you keep asking me for help knowing that you don't need it? Laughing subtly and tilting her head to the side. The boy shrugged his shoulders in embarrassment, forcing away eye contact. I've been doing a little research and a little playing without you every now and then. He scratched the back of his neck. But it just feels so good to play, so whenever I can, I do. He looked back at the keys of the piano, his hair falling in front of his eyes, a small blush appearing onto his face as he avoids her soft gaze. 𝐻/N looked at him with adoration, fondness, affection. Her seeing him like this, him showing her his vulnerability with so little effort. There was something going on with her eyes. She felt like she had hearts covering her vision. This affection that she was finding that she had for him in this moment was overbearing. Her breathing got heavier and her eyes softened. She was love-struck. She was utterly love-struck with that he found for music again. That passion that he discovered even after years of losing it. It gets my mind off of things. It feels really good to play. I can't explain it. Midoriya muttered under his breath in even more embarrassment. Well, there was no need to hide it, Izuku. 𝐻/N laughed heartily at him, leaning her head and her body back against nothing before sitting back straight. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. Truly. Yeah. I really am. He looked back up at her with such affection. He thanked her with his eyes and smiled at her. He thought about how much he missed this passion that he felt when he played as a child. His hands trailed back to the keys. Oh my gosh. Don't get all sappy on me. Waving her hands wildly around her face, hiding her expression. He laughed and ran his hand through his hair. Yeah. Sorry about that. Don't apologize. 𝐻/N got up from her position and walked away from the bench back around to the back of the piano, leaning her back against it, as she did previously before she moved. Now, play me that song you secretly learned. I started learning the piano version of Swan Lake from the Nutcracker, but I really want to learn Moonlight Sonata. Eagerly grabbing his backpack, pulling it to him and taking out a sheet of paper with a series of music notes aligned together. He stood quickly from his seat, accidentally making the bench stumble backwards with a screech, pushing a different sheet of paper into her face with a sparkling glare in his eyes. And I also signed up for a piano competition here too. I know that this is really sudden, but we have been practicing a lot over the past couple weeks, and the competition is in a month from now, and even if I don't place, I think it will be a good experience. Rambling with a huge grin beaming on his face as he looked at 𝐻/N take the paper to look at it from a better range. Oh wow. That's great, Izuku. I'm happy for you. She said, giving him said praise. He smiled, taking back the paper and looking at it as if he was admiring it. Well, he started. Let me show you what I've learned so far. Getting settled back into the bench to set his hands back on the keys. Whenever you're ready, Beethoven, him like. I look up to him in a way, you know. Turning back around to sit correctly in her seat before the train stopped. You're right. You know, I'm so great that there's anyone I can look up to. They should be looking up to me if they want to flourish like I do. He smiled cockily and rested his ankle on his knee, throwing his hands behind his head, slouching. As if anyone would want to look up to you. She said, rolling her eyes whilst standing up, seeing as the train was coming to a stop. Come on, so we aren't late. Going on stage was the hard part. But staying was yet so easy. She could stay and play on a stage with people watching her from the audience for hours on end. She felt accomplished. She felt, although when she took her first step onto that stage with all eyes on her, she felt so shy and timid, but she could never really show that part of her to her onlookers. But, even with the countless amount of time she taught, had her picture taken, the amount of time she was awarded and praised, it all never felt the same as when she got that standing ovation when she finished doing what she loved most. Piano was her passion and she never got tired of it. She only wished to spend the of her life doing what she loved and spend the last moments of it doing the exact same thing. Contestant number 28. 𝐻/N please step to the stage. Someone said over a very loud speaker as 𝐻/N started to make her way onto the stage. Her bow shook slightly in her hand as she held it in the same hand as her bow. She was granted a round of applause before it died down slowly and a bright blinding light stung her eyes immediately. She walked what looked comfortably and with ease. But her body was full of nerves and she started to feel rather anxious. Her face held straight. Anyone could be in the, no, not the audience. She was standing in the middle of a very large stage, in a very large building which was known for its appealing atmosphere and structure. There was vague chatter keeping the room from being completely silent. The judges sat before her writing some things down and quietly talking to each other, avoiding the microphones that sat in front of them on their table. 𝐻/N stood in the middle of stage silent and her head held high but her eyes hung low. Her violin and her now still being held tightly in her hand. The nerves continued to consume her. She felt as if they were stalling, waiting for her to crack. But she pursed with her ever so serious gaze that made her hard to recognize. 𝐻/N stood still, no fidgeting, no jittering, no messing with her fingers, she just stood still. Becoming impatient, she began to look beyond to bright lights that strained her eyes and tried to make our faces in the crowd. The room was very large, so it would be hard for her to spot Katsuki, who was probably standing on the back wall or in a corner somewhere. To her luck, she was unable to see anything. All of the people behind the light just looked like black figures, even the judges. She then --Y/N/L/N-. She was cut from her thoughts and brought back to her present to realize that she on stage about to perform. Your information is customary and accurate. You may begin. Starts now. She almost immediately took her bow from her hand and brung her hand with her violin up to her chin, resting somewhat comfortably on it. She lifted her bow to the strings of her violin and took a long deep breath, taking in the smell of fear, excitement, anticipation. Breathing it all out. She closed her eyes and did it once more to get out all of her uneasiness out of her system. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. She jumped into his arms in appreciation, telling him how much it meant to her that he came to watch her, making Bakugo a little jealous even though he was basically forced and did not want to be there in the first place. Midoriya handed her a small bouquet of colorfully flowers wrapped in pretty paper, in which she gratefully took, saying thank you and that she loved them. She thought as if she was receiving flowers from a father after their daughter did well at a dance or gymnastics competition. Alas, that's what thought of it as. Bakugo went and sat down at an empty table to sit on his phone in peace while 𝐻/N and Midoriya chatted in an open corner of the open room. How does it feel to be up there? I mean, it's nerve-wracking at first, but when I actually start to play, all of those nerves just flow out of me. They both talked about orchestra and such before their conversation was cut short by a tall blonde man drinking what seemed to be alcohol. They both stopped and stared at the man who came before them doing what seemed to be smiling behind his clothes that covered his mouth. Well, Ms. L/N, you put on an amazing performance today. I have been waiting a very long time to meet you. The man spoke, still not introducing himself, although he didn't need to. Whoa, best jeanist, Midoriya said with a small amount of surprise. The man shook his hand firmly and nodded. Hello, Midoriya. Nice to see you again. Your friend Bakugo still does not seem to have any manners. I know he saw me when I walked in earlier, he said with a little attitude before turning back to 𝐻/N, who stood frozen in shock. The pro hero holding his hand out to her to shake in best manners. You know name. She grabbed his hand, shaking it lightly, feeling as if she grasped it too hard it might break off into her hand. Well, of course, I've known you for years, my girl. You are very talented. Her praised her with such geniality it could make her heart and soul melt. Oh mon Dieu, quickly speaking as her nervousness started to show in front of the pro hero. 𝐻/N stood in astonishment, replaying what she just heard in her head a few more times before speaking again. Oh my goodness. Gosh. It's really a pleasure to meet you. Oh my gosh. Stuttering over her words. You have been such a role model for me. It's also a pleasure to meet you too, L/N. Now, I must be taking my leave. Me and 𝐻 came together and he is much ready to go. So, I will see the both of you in some time. Walking off, waving from behind to meet up with his fellow pro hero who stood in the large doorframe apparently impatiently. He actually knew my name, she muttered. He actually knew my name. She yelled, grabbing a hold of Midoriya's shoulders and gripping them in pure bewilderment. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure he's really into music and stuff, so he probably had known you for a while. The green-haired boy laughed a little. You might have to ask Bakugo though, he interned with 2 years ago, because frankly I'm not too he what? He interned with best jeanists. You're joking. No, I'm serious. She stood looking blankly at him, and he stood looking blankly at her, seeing as she was gripping tighter into his jacket sleeves as her anger grew and each second whipped by. She felt like she was confused, but she was 100% aware of what he just said. Her mind started fogging a little bit and her felt as if for some she could not think straight. Her head dipped down and her grip tightened on his shirt. 𝐻/N's knees felt like that were going to give out, and she felt slightly lightheaded. Her vision started to black and blur until she heard Midoriya say, 𝐻/N. Are you okay? Her questioned with concern, feeling her put more of her weight onto him and a tingly sensation in both of his arms where she was holding onto him from. Her vision suddenly comes back and she gains her strength again. She blinked a couple of times and straightened her posture before gaining full control of her consciousness again. Her head then pops back up and looks like she's back to normal. Stating quickly, she let go of him. Are you hungry? Sure, I could eat. Then let's get something to eat. I think I'm ready to leave and go head back to the dorms. Izuku Midoriya Man Superhero 7:22 p.m. for the gala. If there anything specific that you want me to wear. Or is a black suit just fine? Yeah. A black suit will work just fine. TBH, it's whatever you think will be best. You're the one wearing it. Yeah, that's true. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, also, can you resend me the information? I accidentally deleted ITC. Thank you L/N smiling face, you're very welcome. That's how 𝐻/N kept up with them. Very fast seconds, very fast minutes, very fast hours, very fast days. Yet, when she tried to not even look at the time or pay attention to the date, the time seemed to speed up, and the days of every month seemed to be cut in half. Maybe it was just her imagination. Today was the gala. Very exciting. She had her dress, she had her shoes, she had her jewelry, and lastly, she had her date. Nothing could go wrong. Nothing was going to go wrong. For the morning, she decided to just do nothing, but rest and take time for herself so that she could get ready for this huge social gathering. She lay, sprawled out in the comforts of her sheets when she hears a knock at her door. She frustratedly whined and mopped out of her bed to approach her door to see who would be at her door in her time of relaxation. Upon meeting her door, she waited a few more seconds to give her time to wake up and pout some more. She then suddenly swung the door open to see Izuku with food in one hand and 2 cups in his other. Good morning, you hungry? An immediate smile grew on her face, and her eyes lit up beautifully. Come in. 𝐻/N groaned in pleasure as she devoured her first meal of the day. Say 𝐿/N. Muttering as she scarfed down the food. I hope you like it. Started Midoriya. I just picked up something from the nearby cafe, and I thought you would be hungry as well. He joked. 𝐻/N laughed and continued to scarf down the delicious food. So are you ready for tonight? I'm very excited. 𝐻/N takes a sip of a very refreshing iced coffee. Yes. It seems like a very important event and all, I just don't know what to expect. I'm still kind of nervous. The boy lightly laughed and scratched the back of his neck. She swallowed her drink. Nonsense. You will have a great time. We both will. Izuku continued eating with a comforting feeling, replacing his nervous ones. His stomach had been twisting and turning all morning. There's no need to be nervous. It's just a social gathering. You know a lot about those Mr. Pro Hero. Yeah, I guess you're right. Good, now this is supposed to be fun and how do you say? Educational. You do want to play piano, no? No. Of course I do. Good. The girl smiled, reached over, and patted his cheek lightly. No need to worry then. No. You don't understand. 𝐻/N is no ordinary girl. Yes, we are fully aware of the power that 𝐿/N holds. That is why we have brought her here to train her and her abilities so that she does not harm herself or others. No. You don't understand. That girl can make landslides happen, that girl can move buildings. Ma'am dash, and she doesn't even know it. She screamed, making an echoing silence drift across the room. Pro Hero All Might and Teacher Aizawa looked at each other with questioning gazes toward 𝐻/N's aunt. Whenever she has nightmares, she paused to compose herself. She sleepwalks and talks when she has nightmares. She has no idea of the power that she wields, nor that she can wield it at all. She started. She also claims that she hears voices and that she feels this insanely painful ache in her hands even when she doesn't use her quirk. Her quirk drains her energy and sometimes makes her body fail. She has been put on cardiac arrest, times when she has had her lungs just stop out of nowhere, and she passes out frequently. She has shortness of breath which are always so sudden that she isn't even prescribed an inhaler because her episode's suddenness. Ma'am, that's because they aren't there. They aren't in her body fully, they appear out nowhere. Her breath hitched. The doctors said there's nothing that they can do because there's no way to predict them. The lady sitting in the office starts tearing up and clutching her purse. Ma'am. She needs to come home. The woman shakes her head as she starts to back up her belongings in her purse, pulling out a tissue to dry her eyes. I refuse to let her end up like her. She stopped and covered her mouth to try and steady her breathing. You just told me that there's nothing in her documentation, so how will you know when something is wrong? When she's having another one of those episodes, huh? Miss, we are here to help her through this. We want her to be safe, healthy, and the best possible version of herself. This is what we are here for. How am I able to trust you with my niece knowing that since she is in this hero program, she has a chance of her life being taken away simply by just being here? Miss, I would like to all might starts. Your daughter has come to this school to learn about her quirk and how to use and control it. We are here to assist her in any and all of her needs, and we will be sure to protect her and make sure that she can acknowledge the gift that she has instead of viewing it as a curse. I assure you that I will do everything in my power to assure her, and you, that everything will be okay, and that she will suffer no longer. Aizawa ensures, pulling his scarf down to look into her teary eyes, meaning every word he said. Her mouth went agape, and she looked down into her lap. She leans up, brings herself to her feet, and starts to leave the office when she collapses to the floor and breaks down. Aizawa and All Might rush to her side in urgency, trying to lift her up. Please, I don't think she has much time left, dressed up, you know. Instrumentalists are judgmental. Pressing her hands up along her neck and inspecting the necklace that she had been messing with around her neck. She wore a peeling studded necklace with a matching studded bracelet and earrings. 𝐌/N's nails were done and she did her makeup. She did her eyeliner, lip liner, mascara, and other minor makeup touches. If they make comments, it just means they're jealous. Mina says with attitude, slapping 𝐌/N's butt, making her jump in surprise, her yelling and turning to look behind her. So what will you all be doing at this? Queried Ochako while she plodding down on the girl's bed comfortably as if she was making herself at home. She started, it's really just a social gathering where a lot of people who are interested in music come together, converse, listen to music, and all of that. 𝐌/N walked away from her mirror and grabbed the black purse that sat on the bed next to the brunette girl, gathering all of her purse necessities and putting them into the bag. The sun had set once more, and her room was still being illuminated by the operating lights in her room. The few stars that were visible in the newly navy blue cloudy sky. The night was cold as it had been for the past previous nights and early mornings. The air was clear, refreshing, chilly, and it looked as if small snow flurries were going to appear sooner or later. The clock turned another minute and 𝐌/N waved off her friends while they escorted her to the stairs so that she could take her leave to the already present car outside waiting for her and her date. I'm so sorry, Izuku. Did I keep you waiting? 𝐌/N shouted as she saw the green-haired boy standing by the entry doors slipping on his shoes. Midoriya heard her voice and looked up to greet her when he instantaneously became ill. The boy got a look at her and was enthralled, awestruck. It was like he had been blinded by beauty, hit by the graces that Aphrodite had laid upon him, feeling as if he shouldn't have even been able to look her in her eyes. Vaya. He muttered accidentally, unknowing what he was saying. Himen. I knew she was pretty, but I didn't know she was fine. Kirishima uttered loudly, to which Kaminari elbowed him in agreeance. The boys and the girls of 1A giggling and chatter over the balcony, looking at the couple while they both spoke to each other. The boys fawned at her beauty and the girls giggled and smiled, talking about how elegantly she carried herself. She's so pretty, including Kaminari, as they all laughed and joked. My goodness, Izuku. 𝐻/N said as she was standing up straight after fastening her heel strap. She started towards the green-haired boy with her dress following behind her every step. She reached out to the boy who seemed to be getting nervous. The boy whose body stiffened up when she continuously got closer to him. "I always see your tie tied like this for school, but for a formal gathering, mon amour?" she asked as she started to untie his tie in a formal fashion. Ciro then leaned up off the railing of the balcony and then shouted, "W-Riz!" And all the boys began jumping up and down and dapping each other up, hyping up 𝘵𝑗𝑠. Someone saying, "That's my boy. I taught him that SHT," and someone else saying, "𝐿𝑒𝑐𝑎𝑟𝑖𝑧 and they all got even more hyped and started yelling and laughing even louder, hitting and slapping each other playfully as they giggled and played like little children. 𝐭𝐴 obviously glared disapprovingly and then left to see his friends farewell to the gala early and retired himself to his room for the night. 𝐴𝑐𝐻𝑖𝑘ō glared at the boys, and at 𝐻/N seemingly disapprovingly as well. She finished redoing the tie and ran her hand down his structured chest as she got a smell of his extremely potent cologne. She looked up at him and asked, "Are you wearing a cologne?" "Yeah." "Does it smell bad?" "I don't use it often." "I mean, it just pulled it out because no," she said, immediately interrupting him. "It's interesting," she observed. She stroked the tie again and realized what she was doing and quickly stopped, noticing that she was also touching his chest as she did so. "So, are ready?" "I mean, I don't think I would have ever been mentally ready, but we can't doing anything about that," trying to make a joke which came out as more serious than comical. "Good mindset. Just don't think too much." Glancing out the car that was sitting outside the large glass doors in front of them. "All right then, let's get going," everyone said their good nights to each other and left the balcony to their quarters, whilst 𝐻/N and her date made their way out of the door to the car that was parked along the curb. They walked up to the limo who had the chauffeur standing next to the passenger door, opening it as they both came into his sight. "Ms. L/N, the unfamiliar man said while he held out his hand to assist her into the car. The young students climbed into the long car and awaited their long, appealing night together that was yet to come. Everyone had left into their dorms and closed their doors and went about their night, and all 𝐴𝑐𝐻𝑖𝑘ō could think about was the icky feeling that she got as she apparently saw 𝐻/N all over Deku, feeling as if she was doing the extreme. She didn't like it. Hell, she felt as if she wanted to dislike the girl. Although 𝐻/N did not do anything wrong, she felt like she had to do something wrong so that she dislike her. 𝐴𝑐𝐻𝑖𝑘ō knew why she was feeling this aggravated, agitated feeling in her chest. She just wanted to deny herself of that answer, knowing that if she admitted it, she would look at herself as a bad person for feeling this way. And the way the boys were acting as if she was going out on a date with him. It wasn't a date. 𝐵𝑗𝑠 was just being very polite and accepted her invitation. There's nothing more to it. It wasn't like she was more likable than herself for 𝐵𝑗𝑠 to want to go out with. Instead of 𝐴𝑐𝐻𝑖𝑘ō had gotten ahead of herself. She had gotten very irritated during the whole conversation that the two students just had before her eyes. Her face got hot, and she began to clench her fist. It ruined her whole mood for the whole night. For reason that may be to hang out and spend time, a lot more time together. So he never really if it changes or not. But let's be real. 𝐵𝑗𝑠 is true to his feelings and does not modify his thoughts to gaslight himself into thinking he feels a certain way. A few weeks ago, at the social gathering is when he fully realized his feelings for the girl in full effect, being as he saw her in her element mingling and having a great time. He knows that he has gained feelings for 𝐻/N and there's nothing that he's necessarily trying to do to change that. In fact, he has been unintentionally feeding more and more into his feelings and their relationship day by day. With his earliest stages of anxiety coming back to bite him in the butt at times when he saw her. Sun started to set as he was walking back to the dormitories and the bleak wind was starting to get to him through his zipped jacket and the pockets of his pants. A shiver came up his spine and he quickly went into the large glass doors that he exited out of a few hours earlier to go to school. Quickly opening two doors, he went through and was hit by the warm air that was circulating in the building. 𝐵𝑗𝑠 removed his shoes and before he could continue farther into the building he was forced past by someone with a hoodie over their head stumbling to the door. He hesitated before he looked back. What the dash? He turned around to see someone struggling to stand up straight. They looked as if they were in severe pain. "I'm so sorry." The person held onto the door for support, their knees almost giving out. The green-haired boy was then met by a pair of bright purple eyes that had a glow so bright that they emit from under the hood. He got this tingly sensation throughout his body that felt too familiar. It gave him chills. The person then rushed out the door and started running towards the train station to the near test she needed. /N, he got nervous. He started to panic, he started to worry. He started to overthink. Quickly, he burst back out of the doors to see the girl running down the street and then cutting a sharp corner. /N. She felt like she'd die. /N was in a so-called emergency room, which seemed more like an animal cage than a room that you kept people in. A room to keep others safe from whoever or whatever was inside that room. /N. You must hang in the dash, she screamed in frustration and pain. It was too much to bear. Mr. Aizawa and All Might tried speaking to her in her moment of self-inflicted torment. They started at her in terror as this was something they had never witnessed a day in their years of their profession. "What is happening? Help her," All Might said in distress and disquietude, looking around at all of the doctors while they panicked to themselves. "I assure you, we are dash." Something went off. A large, sudden explosion went off in the enclosed room. Everyone behind the glass gasped, stumbled back, and shut their eyes. She began to cry. She cried and she screamed as she was straining her body. As her body was keeping her from moving. This was only herself. This was herself causing such pain. All of the medical machinery and the equipment were all floating around the room. As for her herself, she was levitating over the bed, her back arching as the tears of suffering pursed with no mercy. She screamed and tried to kick, her head was pounding, she felt her heart giving out, she felt lightheaded, it was hard to breathe, her whole body in strain and extreme discomfort. Soon, there was nothing else to come out of her mouth. The screams for now silence. For now, all that you could hear were dreadful sobs and the words, "Help me." Aizawa was terrified. He stared at her in shock. What the hell is happening to her? "Sir, please." Another explosion went off. When the girl in the room was back visible, they saw her start to shake, and she was starting to struggle to breathe. A doctor yelled, "Cardiac arrest." The man stood up, still typing on the holographic keyboard and screen in front of his face. "No." /N's doctor stood up from her chair. "Her heart is failing." Aizawa's head whipped the other way to look at her. "We need to get in there now. We die if we went in there. But we can't just let die." All of the doctors started arguing and yelling in a panic, apparently unaware of what to do. Aizawa looked back into the window and saw the girl struggling to stay with herself. A loud beep started going off into the room. Trepidation was brewing in the whole room system. The girl looked at her teacher as a call for help, mouthing something that he could not understand. But still, he ran out of the room and bursted into the dangerous room where he dodged all of the explosions, an aura blast to grab onto the girl, take off his glasses, and everything stopped. Everything finally. The beeping stopped and make a long loud noise. Then it stopped. The girl in the man's arms shook slightly, while her eyes still emitting a purple shade before it started to dull. Aizawa sat on the ground, trying to regroup, and /N finally started to gasp for air, before the black-haired man was shocked, and then passed out onto the floor. "Is apparently soothing your nerves." Making air quotes before she took another sip of her drink. "I think it's just you." She took a pause and then thought about what she was to say to him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I think you just being here is helping. I mean, it helps." Everything turning towards her, he stared ever so deeply into her eyes, watching her pupils dilate as she was slowly being drawn in by what he was saying. "I don't know what you do, but every time I'm with you, it feels like all of my problems disappear." Sitting up and subtly moving closer to her, making the girl retract her breath and look slightly up at him. "Me just hearing your voice just makes all my mood better." Leaning in closer, making /N subconsciously lick her lips, and her eyes dart from his eyes to his lips over and over again. Anticipation starts to build, and their faces are only inches apart. /N hitching her breath. 𝘠𝑗𝑎 tilts his head to the right as he is continuously getting closer until he felt a hand on his chest. 𝑦/N's face was bloodshot red, and she was breathing heavily, looking up at him while he hovered over her. She swallowed hard, and to keep her balance she used her other hand to keep herself from falling and placed it behind her. "I think you should rest for the night?" Making no eye contact, looking down at her lap. "You have a really big day tomorrow and I don't want you to be tired," muttered just loud enough so that he could hear her. 𝘠𝑗𝑎 licked his lips, looked her up and down, and gave her a cheeky smile. "You always take such good care of me," with a genuine heartwarming smile which made 𝑦/N's heart flutter. A quick peck on the cheek was given to the young and 𝘠𝑗𝑎 quickly stood up and walked to his dorm without another word. 𝑦/N watching in the audience, she could feel a tear fall down her cheek as she smiled. He was wonderful. He did amazing, and her heart felt heavy as she was filled with emotion. It had been a long time since she had seen someone so close to her play so effortlessly and so beautifully like the way he did. 𝑦/N screamed, almost throwing her out of her hand. All of Class 1A cheered and applauded 𝘠𝑗𝑎 for his higher performance place that he had gotten from all of his past couple competitions. Everyone was overjoyed in homeroom, all giving the boy congratulations and even Todoroki giving him a pat on the back. 𝘠𝑗𝑎 was thrilled as well. He just kept on smiling and high-fives his classmates, the students and class immediately going silent when the presence of their so-called stern teacher. The students snickered and giggled lowly, knowing that their teacher obviously saw their unstealthy retreat back to their seats. "All right, class dismissed." "Ooh, good job, Deku," Class 1A said as they all exited the classroom to make their way to their next class. Mina then stopped in front of all of the students blocking their way in the hall. "I think this is a good time to celebrate. Arcade on me." "Hell yeah," Siro said, high-fiving Mina while he walked past her. The rest of the class happily agreeing with him. They all said their goodbyes and came to an agreement on a time and arcade that they would go to after school on this laid-back Friday night. This reminded 𝑦/N of the first day that she came to UA when she was unable to go to the arcade with the others. And now she was happy that she was able to go now to spend time with her friends. The arcade was amazing. Todoroki, Ida, Mina, Tsuyu, Momo, Kaminari, Siro, Kirishima, Bakugo, Ojiro, 𝘠𝑗𝑎, Achiko, Aoyama, 𝐻𝑗, Tokoyami, Mineta, and 𝑦/N all walked into the arcade, and the group was immediately struck by the flashing lights, beeping sounds, and the buzz of excitement in the air. They all quickly made their way over to the game machines, eager to try their luck at winning some prizes and to beat another one of their classmates in a game. Kaminari almost immediately runs over to the basketball hoop game with Mina following, to show off his skills and to impressing his classmates with his accuracy and what he called speed. Mina and Kaminari both fought each other, trying to mess up each other's throws to lose points and time. 𝑦/N and Kirishima both battled each other on the dance machine, Momo and Tsuyu both laughing at the very interesting and big dance moves they were making, and 𝑦/N laughing at how dedicated Kirishima was to win, causing her to fall over in laughter. But after 𝑦/N and Kirishima's match, a little girl came into the platform and suddenly swiped her card, challenging Kirishima in an instant dance battle, and to his surprise and doubts, he lost. Meanwhile, 𝐻𝑗 was trying to win a Hello Kitty plushie from the claw machine, wasting almost all of her money, and still not winning, leaving her upset, but going to find someone else to try and win it for her. Soon, Momo and Bakugo got into this really tough air hockey game, which caused all of the teenagers to gather around the table to instigate the game, and to agitate and fire up Bakugo. Tsuyu and 𝘠𝑗𝑎 matched up and began to play an intense car racing game, while 𝐻𝑗 stole Ojiro and Achiko from watching the game, to try and win the plushie from the claw machine for her. Another intense match started when Bakugo challenged 𝑦/N to Mario Kart, where they both evidently tied for first place all 4 rounds. But on the scoreboard it said that 𝑦/N took the win 3/4 times. By the end of the night, the group had racked up a ton of tickets and a lot of prizes. 𝘠𝑗𝑎 won this ginormous teddy bear from the shop, and gave it to 𝑦/N with a blush on his face, because ostensibly no one else wanted it. All of the teens high-fived each other and laughed at all of the pictures and videos taken, and just by being in the moment and in each other's company. As they headed back to the dorms before curfew, exhausted but happy, the group couldn't help but feel excited about the nice warm shower and their comfortable bed that they had awaiting them when they got back safely to UA. "Wanna see kind of thing?" "No, I don't think so." Turning back around to see Midoriya had grabbed her hand gently and turned her around. She looked at him with wide deer eyes in curiosity when he said, "Can I show you something? You should at least take me out on a date before you bring me to meet your parents, mon amour." 𝐻/N teased as she watched as Midoriya used his personal house keys to unlock the door to what seemed to be his house. "My parents are not home." He chuckled whilst finally opening the door. "Well, Maya's visiting a friend of hers since a close relative of theirs passed away," letting her through the door, listening to her hum at his statement. As she was let through the door, she inspected the tidy house while each light was still being turned on. "My the home owner's son. You have a very nice home." Admiring the Midoriya household in its whole. Looking around like a deer in headlights, seeing that she had been in this very house once a very long time ago. The green-haired boy grabbed her hand gingerly and led her to a room with a closed door in a hallway of his home. He opened the door to reveal a dirty room with a lot of dust and books that made 𝐻/N sneeze before she even entered the room. The green-haired boy flipped the light switch, which seemed to not have been working. So instead he walked farther into the room and took down a curtain which was covering the bright moonlight from the sky. And then walked over to what looked like a table being covered by a tablecloth, holding more books. The boy picked up the books and placed them on the floor next to the table before suddenly grabbing the tablecloth and tossing it off onto the floor to reveal an absolutely appealing piece of artwork. It was a stunning piano with engravings and shiny but dusty keys. "This is what I wanted to show you." Walking into the room, in a trace by this piano, she ran her fingers over the keys and sat on the bench which was right under the moonlight shining from the window. "It was my dad." Midoriya sat down next to her and wiped the dusty keys with his hoodie, the piano making noise as he did so, and then looked back up at 𝐻/N with a goofy smile on his face, wanting her to give him the go. And so she nodded to the piano, slightly laughing. His fingers caressed the ivory keys with a gentle touch. He closed his eyes and took a small breath before he began to let the music fill his soul. He developed a very familiar arrangement, each note resonating deep within him and her. With each passing moment, he lost himself in the beauty of the melody and the girl that sat next to him. His fingers dancing across the keyboard as a beauty began to resonate inside of him. 𝐻/N looked at the appealing boy who sat next to her. She looked at his face and his beauty while his fingers gently moved from ivory to ivory as each passing second went by. She felt like she was going to cry. Her eyes started to sting, still not being able to look away from him. This an ethereal symphony that would echo through her mind like a fever dream. The notes flowed effortlessly from his fingertips, each one blending seamlessly with the next to form perfect harmony. As the piece progressed, 𝐻/N could feel herself becoming more and more entranced by the music and by this boy playing it. Her heart swelled with emotion, the stinging in her eyes became more painful. He continued to play, pouring his heart and soul into every note. For a time, he forgot all of his worries and fears, and they were both lost in the beauty of the moment and the music. Finally, as the final notes drifted away, he opened his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling invigorated. This was the very piano had once given him his life, and was now bringing it back to him once again. Looking up from the keys, he smiles and turns to look at 𝐻/N to find her crying. Tears streamed down her face and it felt they would never stop. 𝐻/N, he quickly moved closer to her and cuffed her face in his hands. "I'm so sorry, are you 𝐻-?" She intertwined her hands with the hands that were on her face. She became all so vulnerable in such little time. Her heart broke down, she broke down. She all of a sudden began to feel this fast rush of emotions running through her veins like adrenaline. Unexpected, the girl grabbed hold onto the boy's hoodie. She titled her head and pulled him so close that Midoriya felt 𝐻/N's lips smash onto his. No, is passion. The warmth of her body against his, he could feel her. He could feel her body, her emotions, her overwhelming longing and excitement. She released the grip on his hoodie and dragged both of her hands to the back of his neck. Midoriya pulled her closer by her waist, and 𝐻/N tilted her head more and deepened the shared kiss as her arms then wrapped around his neck. She had to stop. It felt good. She both pulled away, a string of saliva being made as their lips departed. Butterflies fluttered around in her stomach as she stared into his mesmerizing big green eyes. They both stared at each other in devouring eyes, and before they could say anything, they both just stayed gazing into each other's eyes, the young couple sitting under the moonlight. She started. Text. He nodded at her sweetly and tilted his head in confusion waiting on her answer. L/N. There you are. We've been looking all over for you. Momo came down the bookshelves like a superhero coming to save the day. Sorry to steal her from you, but we have a really important project to work on, right L/N? All she could do was nod. So we'll be on our way. Bye-bye now. Dragging 𝐻/N and Midoriya's hands apart so that 𝐻/N could be led out of the library by her. God, what's wrong with you today? That was the hardest human interaction I've ever had to watch in my life. Ugh, she groaned in dissatisfaction and disappointment to herself, seeing that she wasn't even able to have a normal conversation with the same boy that she's been in class with for almost a year. The school day was done and all of the Class 1A girls were gathered in Momo's room for the girls' meeting to figure out what's wrong with 𝐻/N. Order in the court, order in the court. Ghiryu said standing up. We are all gathered here today in the courtroom to adhere to the 𝐻/N project, to figure out what has happened to this specimen of a girl. She paused. Now, either L/N will tell us herself what is wrong, or we will use our investigative bureau and our intelligence agency to find out what is wrong with her, meaning that we will have to have a second court meeting. She said in actuality. The girls in the room nodded, and all suddenly turned to 𝐻/N who sat in the chair next to the door. The girl next to the door sighed. I think I'd just be better off telling you all than just keeping it to myself, standing up from the chair and making her way to the center of the girls and sitting down. Maybe you all would be able to help me figure out what to do. All of the girls went completely silent waiting on her answer. Me and a boy, the girl hesitated before continuing. Me and a boy and I'm super nervous around him, and no dash, 𝐻/N was quickly interrupted by the screams and shouts of all of the girls' excitement. OMG! Who did you kiss? They have to go here, right? OMG, was he cute? When did you kiss? OMG, was he a good kisses? OMG, that's so cute he makes you nervous. He must be cute. Wait guys. Hold on. Momo said finally calming down all of the girls. Is that why you were acting so weird with Midoriya today? Was it him? All 𝐻/N had to do was sigh and put her head in her hands before all of the girls started screaming and yelling again. OMG, stop 𝐻/N, that's so cute. I knew you had a thing for him. But it was odd. All of the girls were all so happy for 𝐻/N and giving her words of encouragement and telling her to go for it. But when it came to Achiko, she looked irked, and looked as if 𝐻/N did something wrong. She did not like that at all. Soon the meeting was done. 𝐻/N got some good advice and walked out of the room with a good feeling. Although, it wasn't too long before that good feeling faded all too quickly. L/N. I think we should chat. Looking at the girl completely and utterly ignoring him, he raised his eyebrows in surprise and crossed his arms in question, watching as she acted like he didn't even exist. But this time it hurt worse because he was standing right in front of her. Well, maybe if you weren't hanging out with your girlfriend you would know. Bakugo said sternly with an intent to hurt, leading 𝐻/N out the door to the train station. Oh my gosh, Aizu. Achiko runs to his side and hugs his arm. What did you do to make her so mad? She's completely ignoring you, talking in a babyish tone. I'm not sure, Midoriya said, brushing her off of him to go to lock himself in his room until 𝐻/N came back to the dorms. The room suddenly ensued with applause. She was given a standing ovation while she stood mindlessly in the blinding lights, moderately out of breath. Her mouth stood agape while her chest rose and fell. 𝐻/N stood in the middle of the stage as she played. Tears peeled from her eyes and she just now realized that tear droplets on the floor. Bowing to the judges, to the audience and to whomever else was seemingly proud of her. 𝐻/N's hair flopped into her face while her upper half of her body was leaning down. She then suddenly stood back up straight, and quickly walked off stage with non-stop tears coming down her face. She was ready to leave. She didn't care if she won or not. She was just ready to go. Bakugo in the crowd immediately got the hint and followed her backstage to help her get her things. Won't leave me alone. The door pushed open and she stumbled back. Midoriya came through her doorway and closed the door behind him. I know it's not the fact of not leaving alone. She starts walking towards her. I want you to talk to me, please. She stepped back with every step he took forward. And Midoriya, she stuttered, also most tripping over nothing on her floor. Since when did you stop calling me by my first name? Asking another question. The two of them just kept on walking until 𝐻/N's back hit the wall, and Izuku was standing over her. Why are you ignoring me? N/N, talk to me. He cornered her on the wall and gently tugged at the belt looks of her slacks while he looked down at her. She looked everywhere but this eyes. Because if she did, she wouldn't be able to look away. 𝐻/N, look at me. She shook her head. 𝐻/N. Midoriya grabbed her face gently and turned her face to his. Look at me. And she finally did. She looked into his spellbinding green eyes that captured her into a trace once more. He moved his face closer to her and asked, tell me if you don't want this. Her heart starts racing and the anticipation starts building up as she watching his slowly continue to move closer to hers. She was so where to go, and she was legitimately trapped against a wall. She didn't say anything because if she did she would say something that she don't want to say, but if she didn't something that can't happen would happen again. Didn't care. He smashed his lips onto hers and she melted her into his arms as she felt them wrap around her body. She cupped his face with her hands and subconsciously pulled him closer, deepening the kiss and pushing their bodies closer together. She tilted her head to the right on the wall to get a better angle, and she ran her fingers through his green locks and up and down his muscular back. She was in the middle of mentally thanking whoever made this happen when she realized that they to stop. She pushed him back off of her and tried to let herself catch her breath before speaking. Midoriya, wait. He started to peck gentle kisses down her neck and onto her shoulders, starting moving her shirt out of the way. Wait. She used her hand and pried him off of her body. Breathing heavily, her head in a whirly daze, she tried gathering her thoughts, and before she could even speak, Midoriya interrupted her. No. She started. I see, we can't do this. That kiss was a one-time thing, it was nothing more, it was just a kiss. She shouted at the boy while she unintentionally messed up his hair with the hand that she was trying to push the boy away with. She looked at him into his eyes while he looked slightly up at her through his lashes. If it was just a kiss, it wouldn't have felt like that. Midoriya expresses with a loving glint in his eyes while he began to stand up straight. You're telling me you didn't feel anything? 𝐻/N started stuttering nervously under her grasping gaze. The boy looked down at her in this nervous state while she thought of what she would say next. I have feelings for you, 𝐻/N. Midoriya I have feelings for you. I want you. I feel like I want you to stay by my side. The boy's height started to decrease, and Midoriya's knees hit the floor in front of her. The boy kneeling in front of her grabbing a hold to her legs and folded his arms around them tightly. There's not a morning that goes by that I don't think about you, there's not a day that goes by without me thinking about you, 𝐻/N. My feelings for you grow even more as each day goes by. Your infectious laugh, your passion, your kindness, your witty remarks, have binded my heart to you as if it were a spell. The boy paused and tighter his grip on her legs. I find myself thinking about you all the time, wondering what you're doing and how you're feeling. To be near you, to run my fingers through your hair, to gaze into your eyes and lose myself every time in their depths. Midoriya. 𝐻/N tried to start. You have opened up a world of possibilities for me, and I am grateful to whoever for every moment we have spent together. Every training session, every music lesson, every late-night snack run, every time we sit in this goddamn room and do absolutely nothing. He stopped and nuzzled his face in her legs before he finished speaking. I don't care if you don't reciprocate my feelings, but I just want to continue to be with you. I want to continue to cherish you and your company. I love everything about you with every fiber in my body. It has been breaking my heart to have seen you just blatantly ignoring me like that. Even if it was for little over a weeky, just don't want you to mentally depart from the relationship we already have. He finally stopped. Everything was off his chest. He breathed lightly and surely like a burden had been lifted off his chest. He had finally said it aloud, all of it. And even thought he didn't care if she did not share the same feelings. The silence suddenly became too unbearable. Her breathing was heavy. He could hear it. He finally looked up from the girl's legs to see water pouring from her eyes. She looked at him with a tear-stained smile before it quickly fell and she started sobbing. Sliding down the wall until she was finally 𝘿𝑗𝑠's height again and crouched down on her knees and started to cry her eyes out. Izuku was taken by surprise and suddenly hugged 𝐻/N around her head. She tried to talk, but the tears were choking back her words. Wachiko, he stood up straight to listen to her while she caught her breath. She told me that since I never had any dating experience with anyone, I shouldn't take it any farther with you because I don't actually have feelings for you. I only like the idea of you. Admitting finally why she had been distanced this whole week. And if I let it go any farther than the kiss last week, then I'd just end up playing with your feelings. He removed his arms from around her to look at her face, and then he laughed. Oh, 𝐻/N kissed her on her forehead, and then went back in for another hug. Because I'm not going to lie to you. He looked away from the ceiling and back at her, feeling her eyes on the side of his head. He gave her this look, and then turned his head to look back to the ceiling, not wanting her to give him that glare of sadness. I know. Her nightmares had been progressively worse, and this person's has been becoming more actual in its being than a figment of her imagination that it's been scaring her. Her state hasn't been getting any better day by day. Nightmares were getting worse, her quirk was subconsciously making her weaker, and draining all of her energy. Some days she wouldn't even be able to get out of her bed. Splitting headaches were common, she would get random bruises on her body during the night. Dark prominent circles curated onto her under eyes due to her lack of sleep. Her nose would bleed, and at random she would collapse. She was in and out of the hospital weekly, and almost daily. She was in pain and misery. All the doctors ever talked about was scary stuff that she didn't want to hear. So she tuned them out. Aizawa has been one of the most concerned, besides Mitsuki. Some days he thinks that she maybe just needs to stop using her quirk overall. But he was trying to have hope that with all the right training and medical care it could be fixed. But who knows? I have another doctor's appointment later today. Unexpectedly speaking up. And I'll be kind of free-ish for the next 3 weeks because I'll be preparing for a solo for the intro to that opera that's coming here, so don't change the subject. I just figured you didn't want to talk about it anymore. That doesn't mean we can just brush past it. Shouting at her. She sat unfazed knowing that he was only in distress, using intimidation and anger to try and suppress it. You yelling helps nothing. He sighed at the fact. He was hurt, he did what would happen, but he would rather relish in anger and yell at her than be burdened with sadness. I'm going to train. He got up from the floor and began walking to the room door. Jolting up, 𝐻/N looked towards his way and started standing up as well. Let me go as 𝑊-? Absolutely not. Why no? She was quickly cut off by the slam of her door, almost making her room shake from the force. 𝐻/N's shoulder shrank in mildness, a frown then appearing on her face. Shithead. She yelled out of character. The girl sat back down on her floor with an attitude. She had an angered look on her face before it instantly changed into a sorrowful expression. Tears became apparent on her face, as they steered to the sides of her face, and next to her ears. Sniveling at her state, her breathing stuttering, and she fisted her hands and began hitting them repeatedly against the floor. She screamed loudly and then quickly covered her mouth. Still crying and lost in thought, she sat up and sighed. I have a doctor's appointment. And with that she got up, got ready, and headed out the door to the train station for a long day at the emergency department. Midoriya exclaimed as he panicked a bit. I wouldn't have signed up for that competition today, you know what. I'll just not go. Standing up about to rush out of the door to take care of business, he was stopped by a hand pulling back on him. Nonsense. 𝐻/N said, patting his head, and gently ruffled his hair. It's only one day. And besides, you never may know who's in the crowd of these competitions these days. But this whole opera thing seemed really important, he said shyly as he sat back down. I have a lot of important things constantly happening in my life. Don't worry over it, you can just see me another time. Smiling at the boy who sat with a pout and reluctance. I guess so. Good. She groaned, getting up from her sitting position, slightly out of breath when she finally stood. I have to start preparing, so I'm going to leave early for rehearsal. Make sure you've picked out a decent piece for tonight, because they aren't providing one for you. Moving over to grab her purse, still looking for her phone, and already prepared to leave before Midoriya arrived at her door to give her some company. I'll see you later, mon amour. She grabbed his face and gave him a peck on his lips. When she starts to leave, she heard him call her name. To which she turned around to see him say, "So, when are we going to start dating?" "Pardon?" Shooting around to turn back to him. "When are we going to make official?" He said with no hesitation nor nervousness. "You treat me like your boyfriend, I act like your boyfriend, I want to be your boyfriend, you want me to be your boyfriend, so what's holding us up at this point?" Getting up and walking towards her. "Izuku, you've rejected me a number of times, yet you still do things like which gives me mixed feelings n/n. Starting stuttered, she looked back behind her to try and look fit her phone. "Do you just not want to put a label on our relationship?" "Izuku." She blushed and pushed him away by his chest, trying to hide her face. "We don't have to be a couple per se, but I do like the name 𝐻/N's boyfriend. I could definitely get used to done called that." The boy played with a strand of her hair around his finger, looking her straight in her eyes. "I really, when you try and act like you're not head over heels for mites like you constantly me to be all over you." "Izuku 𝐻/N said as she walking away from the door and towards him. He walked backwards with a sneaky grin on his face. She walked closer and closer, leading him to her bed. He tripped on the front of it and was forced into the mattress by both of her hands. "You are," she stopped when she spotted her phone and grabbed it. "You are truly just so captivating." She then gave him another kiss before slipping on her jacket. "I'll see you later, mon amour." Going back to her door. "Do great. And good luck." And then closing it behind her so that she could head to the train station to await her train. On the other hand, Midoriya stayed in her room in a giggly daze, reminiscing on the appealing girl who always non-verbally conveyed her strong feelings towards him. "She really has me wrapped around her finger, heard this before," he said as he started playing the intro. The song "A Wave of Nostalgia" hit him in the face like a train. He continued playing, and this sentimental piece seemed so important he just could not figure out why. Quickly, he played the piece one time through, still trying to remember where he has heard this from, and got up and started out of the music room and walked down the hall and went to the library. Entering the library, he went over to the copier and printer to copy the sheet music in his hand. Also in the library, stood Jairu reading in a little corner of the library. "Oh, hey Midoriya." She finally noticed him and waved him over. "What are you doing here?" Walking over to her and sitting on the couch next to hers. "I could ask you the same thing," he responded. "Just doing a little reading. It's usually noisy in the commons at this time. I was just about to copy sheet music I need for tonight." "Oh cool. You have a piano competition." "Yeah. You should come. It's only for a little anyways. I think you would enjoy it." "Yeah, I'll totally stop by. Send me the information, it's not like I'm doing anything." He smiled. He talked to her a bit more before he finally went back to his original task of copying the sheet music, and then went back to the music room to run over it a few more times, unexpectedly learning it rather quickly. "I couldn't say the same for you. You look terribly tired. Are you okay? Are you sick?" 𝐻/N did not find her question rude at all, knowing that Victoria has always had a straightforward personality. "I'm quite well, Victoria, but thank you." "Well then, let's get you to the theater. I know everyone is dying to see you." They both began walking down the street to arrive to a car that was parked. They got in and then rode to the theater. Once getting there, they were both greeted by the stage director, play producer, and more of the rest of the cast and crew members. Everyone welcomed Victoria a very nice welcome back, and then all of them very excitingly took the time to meet 𝐻/N, seeing as they never met her, only seeing her in magazines, websites and such. "It's so great to meet you." I have always wanted to see you play in person. One of the ensemble orchestra players said, holding her hands together with a smile across her face. You are so talented. And you work so hard. You truly deserve that award you won earlier last year. I love your hair. Do you have someone to do it? We met at the gala a few weeks ago, remember? Me and one of my friends introduced ourselves to you. It's been so long, 𝐿/and darling. How's 𝑒𝐵 been treating you? When did you stop going to the School of Music in France? Yes, someone took a picture of you and that hero in training that goes to UA at the gala, and it's been on social media. You not seen? Is he not your boyfriend? Yes, I did play in Hadestown in the States. You recognize me. 𝐻/and darling, are you feeling well? The stage director asked. Backstage, the crew were bombarding her with questions and trying to talk to her without even taking a minute to realize that she was extremely low on energy, and her social battery had died quicker than expected. Give her some space, he said while trying to swat the rest of the crew away. If you need a rest before we do a rerun of the show and you have to go on. No, he think I'll be fine for now. Thank you. Tired, she walked from behind stage to go sit in the velvet seats before she had to go on to do a quick practice run before tonight. Lazily, she sat down in the seat, with her arms laying across the top of the seat in front of her, put her head down on her arms and slowly fell asleep to regenerate, try and herself. But, after taking a nap that felt like 5 minutes, a younger guy came up in front of her to tap her shoulder a few times before actually waking her up. Slowly gaining consciousness again, the girl lifted her head and looked the boy who stood in front of her wearing a backstage crew shirt on. Say, Director Shin says it's time for you to come backstage. Getting up and walking backstage, feeling even more draining and lifeless, her energy continued to fall. Her body felt odd, she was running on fumes. It wasn't as if she was tired per se, she just felt like energy was constantly and slowly draining herself of everything. Making it backstage, the director goes onto the stage and walks around, giving the lighting crew time to get ready. Curtains will draw. I will come on stage, I will say a few words expressing my gratitude to the theater to be filled with people coming to see hard work. He stopped, clearing his throat. And then I will leave the stage. Blackout. And then 𝐻/and you will rush to the center stage. And before the lights come up, you will start playing the intro. Got it? He yelled from the other side of the stage that was covered by the curtains. The lights dimmed and as quickly as she could to center. Shin, the director, walked down in front of the velvet seats behind the ensemble orchestra that was being ready to be directed by the musical conductor and sat quickly before heading a appealing symphony coming from the stage. The orchestra started playing bellow, and then the lights brightened to that blinding hue that 𝐻/and significantly disliked in the moment. Her face was dull and full of no life, her hands moved the bow up and down the strings of her violin, creating an alluring siren-like song. She closed her eyes and started to bury herself in the ravishing feeling of playing her violin for another time. Swaying to her own tune, she breathed heavily as if she was taking in the sounds and entranced herself with them. After a short while, the arrangement was over with 𝐻/and still playing and the lights blackening as she exited her harmony. Walking off the stage, 𝐻/and heard from the audience, heavenly, elegant, exquisite, appealing, ravishing, divine, magnificent. You have such an absolutely pulchritudinous soul, my darling. Yelling and running up to her behind to curtains. Face. You have that. That is what I want. Entrance the audience before the show even begins. Yes. Praising her and squishing her face. Later, the director went back to directing his stage play throughout the whole 3-hour duration that it would be. Then, the cast and crew clapped up their last rehearsal of this play. Then he dismissed the cast to go to the designated stylist and makeup artist in the building that was only a block away. Victoria and 𝐻/and some of cast members walked together to get ready for their show in just a few hours. The boy sighed loudly and his head was starting to be filled with even more worries. Do not worry, Midoriya. Your friends will be here to cheer you on as well. Midoriya, running his hands under the running water of his sink faucet, cupped his hands and then threw the water back onto his hair to slick it backwards. Alright, I'm going to get a head start. I sent you guys the time, so don't worry. Before leaving out of the door, he grabbed his sheet music and the green folder that 𝐺/N gave him that was already filled with other pieces of paper. Lock my door on the inside on you guys' way out. And out the door he went, getting downstairs to slip on his shoes. 𝐒𝐴𝑐𝐲 sitting the couch with 𝐺𝑬𝑗, Mina, and Momo secretly watched him put on his shoes before he left out of the dormitory doors. "Where's Deku going?" she asked the girls, clearly giving them no true attention. 𝐺𝑬𝑗 started while she had a chip in her mouth. "I'm pretty sure he's getting ready to go to his competition that's later tonight." "I'm going too." "Oh, that sounds fun. We should all go to support Midoriya," Momo said enthusiastically, pumping her fist in the air.
Yeah.
"We should all go." Mina agrees. "Too bad Ms. 𝐌/N couldn't make it. How sad." 𝐺𝑬𝑗 scoffed in aggravation and got up from her spot on the couch. "Gosh, you're so petty, Achiko. You can't go one day without saying some petty SHT like that." Walking about from the group to go get ready in her dorm room. "I'm going to start getting dressed, and if you're coming I suggest you do too. And wear something nice." Already behind stage, Midoriya looked beyond the curtain to be faced with a full house out of people in the seats below the stage watching the people who were being hit by the blinding lights above their heads. Having less time that Midoriya initially wanted so that he would have time to prepare, a lady with glasses and wearing a pencil skirt came behind the curtain to tell the green-haired boy that he was up next. The anxiety really starting to hit him, he ran his fans through his hair and tired to think about what 𝐻/N would say if she were here with him. He had convinced himself that that was the reason why the day felt so particularly odd, special, peculiar. Snapping out of his thoughts, he walked on stage as the lady told him to do so. Once again being met by those annoying eye-rendering lights. Once he was close enough to the piano bench, he bowed to the judges and sat down. Number 17 Izuku Midoriya, playing the boy nodded. "Contestant number 17, Izuku Midoriya, your information is customary and accurate. You may begin. Your time starts now." Yes. Touch up her makeup right out of the house. "I'm pretty sure he's excited for you too." Right, elbowing the boy who was on his phone to grab his attention. "Yeah, for sure." Her smile got even bigger, and she felt like she was going to cry too. She awed at the boy, and went to hug him as well before having to continue up the stairs and up into the large appealing doors of the theater. Once she was inside, she was led to the backstage where she was led into another room, changed out of her dress and put into a new dress. Her makeup was redone to a simple natural look, and her hair was changed. This itself took what felt like forever, having her energy to drop to a zero once again. She didn't even want to leave the stool that she sat on to have her makeup fixed. She felt even more drained than before. Soon enough, she was done and ready for curtain call. The show way about an hour from starting and backstage was hectic. People were running around looking for props, looking for putting the finishing touches on the actors, and someone even lost their instrument. While 𝐻/N sat on a couch that was placed backstage in her whole thoughts, she began to feel like she was missing something, or had lost something. More time went back, and it was 1 hour until the show, and then it was only 30 minutes until curtain time. She felt lost, tired, drained, and exhausted, having nothing to do since she wasn't able to have her phone on at any time while she was backstage. After a while, she finally got up and went to a different room, her current dress being a lot easier to wear, and used her quirk to lift her violin when she remembered something so important that she so easily forgot. In shock, she accidentally dropped her violin back onto the table and ran out of the doors backstage that lead outside into the starting night. Running around the corner to see a row of cars resting on the side of the curb. Running up to the nearest car, opened the door, and quickly got in. The driver quickly turned around, startled at the sight of their passenger door being randomly opened. "Hannah, please. I need you to take me somewhere." Driving down the highway, the traffic was heavy, and she was also to the theater, sitting impatiently in her seat, scared that she was going to be too late. The theater was about 3 blocks away, and adrenaline was running through her veins and she was breathing heavily in impatience. "Is the traffic moving?" 𝐻/N asked Hannah as her leg bounced up and down in anticipation. "No, I don't think so," 𝐿/N, turning back around to look back at the road. She sat in the back seat a little before she let her intrusive thoughts win, and she starts to take off her seat belt in a hurry. "I'm getting off here." In shock, Hannah whipped her head around to see 𝐻/N already halfway out of her car, stepping into the street filled with cars. In the middle of all of this traffic, already fully out of the car. When the traffic lightens up, pull around to the front of the theater and wait until I leave back out. I'll be back in time for the show. Ms. L/N. And then she shut the door, and almost immediately started sprinting down the street in her heels to be able to make it in time to see 𝘸𝘩𝘪𝘐 play in the piano in the competition and be able to make it back to the theater in time for the intro. Running through the rows of cars as fast as she could, feeling the wind hit her face in large gust of wind. The cold, chilly air hit her legs, making them cold while she lifted her dress with her hands to move the fabric out of her way so that she's able to run nonstop the full block. Still running as fast as she could, her eyes brightened and she started smiling as she saw the theater in eyesight. She started running faster and faster and soon cutting across a row of cars to get to the sidewalk. 𝘸𝘠𝘪𝘐 filled her mind as she started straining herself as she still ran, almost to her desisted destination. She ran up the first few steps and burst through the entry doors being hit by the warm air and quickly went up to reception desk. Breathing heavily, her heartbeat felt like it was about to beat through her chest. What room is Division B's piano competition being held in right now? Right now Division B would be in Auditorium 31. It's located on floor W-, and again, she sprinted past the elevator and ran to the stairs across the hallway and tried her best not to trip or fall. Her heart still beating faster than she could think. Finally making it up to the second floor and rushed down the hallway quickly glance. A man was standing in by the door and stood stiffly. She bolted to the door, and before she could even lay a finger on the door, the man standing by it suddenly moved in front of it, blocking her way of entry. Competition already started. You cannot walk it right now. No. I'd get in there. Too bad, kid. Book it. And looked away from her and continued doing his job. I need to dash. What did I just tell you? You're not getting in here, he said with a scoff and then started whistling. She felt like crying. Looking to the ground in defeat, her eyes started stinging. Then, 𝐻/N started breathing even heavier now, and her eyes started to twitch. A sudden rise of anger began to consume her. 𝐻/N's breathing hitched, her hands started shaking and her eyes started glowing a deep shade of purple. I said, slowly lifting her head back up. I need to get in here right now. The man in front of the door instantaneously flew down the hall screaming and then hit the floor with a loud thud and a pain-wrenching scream of agony. Holding his back and his head, he laid on the ground speechless. I have ran 3 blocks nonstop to get here. Her hair was now glowing, and it was now flowing on top of her head. Her eyes were an ember shade of purple, her hands were surrounded by that purple light, and that anger was fulfilling her. I have ran through traffic, and I have been blown at and almost ran over. Getting closer to the man, trying to back away on the ground with each step. And you have the audacity to tell that I can't get into the dash. She immediately stopped and came to her senses. Her hair dropped to her back and her hands and eyes stopped glowing. She lowered her hand that was unknowingly up and ready to strike when she realized that she was about to hurt an innocent man. Her hand flew to her mouth, backing away in fear and fright. I'm so sorry, and she then quickly ran into the auditorium room that she had worked so hard to get into, to find out that she was just in time. As each second rolled by, she was inadvertently being drawn in even more by the music he played. Listening to an appealing piece that she didn't dare name. He had played with such intensity and emotion that it was bringing 𝐻/N closer and closer to tears. Suddenly her eyes started stinging and emerging with tears that also immediately rode down her cheek to make room for more. He was breathtaking. He was spellbinding. He was alluring. He was prepossessing. The tears rushed down her face, to soon created a tear-stained print along her cheeks. She breathed heavily, being overwhelmed and overpowered by the emotions that this song carried with it. 𝐻/N's breath was unsteady and she just couldn't bring herself to look away from him. He playing this for her, this for. The fond and dreadful memories that this song brings back are too much to handle. Her eyes then started to glow, and her lip began to quiver. Her nose was now red, and she subtly wiped her nose so that it would not run. Izuku looked so self-assured and elegant. Playing each note as if it was embroidered into his hands, he had finally found the cure for that jealousy and envy that he constantly felt like watching someone else play the piano when he couldn't. His fingers continued to move across the keys with a grace and fluidity that 𝐻/N had never witnessed before. A rush of excitement started to flow through his hands as he played, a passion that would keep him from ever stopping. Lost in his own world of music and emotion. And then the number started to finish, and 𝐻/N sullenly watched as Midoriya's fingers slowed on the keys as he played the final notes of the song, and the audience erupted into applause, and 𝐻/N left the room before hearing his last note play with a wave of tears still stringing down her face. 𝐻/N began to cry again as she stood backstage with her violin in her hand about to go on stage. She wiped her face and swallowed hard while she tried to pull herself together. The director was on stage, giving the audience a few words of his gratitude of the large crowd that was gathered there tonight. And with that, the show must go on. Enjoy. The crowd cheered and applauded as the lights slowly dimmed, and as practiced, 𝐻/N walked onto the dark stage and began to play before the lights brightened again. A purple energy burst was shot throughout the entire room and quickly disappeared, leaving the audience fearful and confused. And then, suddenly 𝐻/N abruptly dropped to the ground and passed out across the stage, her violin snapping loudly as it hit the ground, sliding to her far right. The crowd gasped and emerged into small chatter in shock and surprise. After straining and holding herself together to finish the last note of the whole arrangement, 𝐻/N's body has finally given out and she was sprawled out across the stage, with the lights dimming. Rushed to the nearest hospital in the area by ambulance and was led into the hospital doors on a stretcher, quickly being hooked into machines and looked at by many doctors at a time. Finally coming back into consciousness, she started to hear to doctors' loud voices, and she was being surrounded by an overwhelming loud place that seemed dreadful. Edition 6C. Checking heart R dash, measuring her dash, defibrillators on and ready, check for dash, ready. We're losing pulse dash, electric shock T dash, in 3, 2, 1 dash, test going in 3, 2, 1 dash, Ms. L/N, try and stay with me dash. The doctors shined a bright flashlight in her eyes and tried to use defibrillators to bring her heartbeat back. The hospital seemed to be overwhelmed and rushing with adrenaline. 𝐻/N's heartbeat was very unstable, yet she was conscious enough to be able to tell what was happening at the moment. Don't worry L/N. You're going to be dash. The voices kept being drowned out at random times and coming back at random. Her eyesight kept blurring and clearing back up constantly like a rhythm. But then she was suddenly knocked unconscious. A shock wave flew through her body, making her body explode into flames of indescribable pain and agony. The shock flew through her body, and then the body exerted it out towards all the doctors who got down to take cover. All quickly getting back to lead the stretcher back into a room farther down the hectic hallway. On the other hand, Mitsuki, Mizura, and Katsuki all bolted to the scene to follow 𝐻/N's ambulance to the hospital. Mitsuki, almost on the verge of tears, ran inside the hospital up to the reception desk. Where's the girl? She just came in here on a stretcher. I'm sorry ma'am, but she's not in the system you dash. No, it doesn't matter. We need to be with her. Where did they take her? Down the hall and to the left ma'am. Thank you. And she quickly started down the hallway to find where the doctors took her. The Bakugus then all made a sharp left and saw the stretcher going into a room with 2 large doors and 2 windows. Mitsuki sighed and sat down in one of the 2 chairs that sat on the empty wall of the now abandoned hallway. She lowered her head and placed her hands together and quickly said a prayer for 𝐻/N. Whoa, you guys are kind in a hospital bed. 𝐻/N was getting no breaks. She was being treated and plugged into machines, being her BLD taken, being talked to by too many people at once, not knowing what they said. She felt scared. Every now and again she would keep hearing the words, failing, time, less. But who knows what they could be talking about at a time like this. Her body kept jolting and she felt tears running down her eyes, making her eyesight even worse. Trying her best to look around, her body continued to jolt at random, and she continued to shake, and soon her vision was overtaken by purple, this making her almost blind. She turned her head to the right, and saw someone peeking through the window, looking inside the room, and then disappearing again. They obviously weren't happy, but why? Wasn't she going to be okay? Someone else bursted through the door and shouted, "I'm here," and run up to a walk and checked the files and papers in it, and then walked up to the bed that she laid on and tried to reassure her. "Everything's going to be fine. You're going to be okay, 𝐻/N." She laid there still racking with pain, breaths still coming in and out very shallow. The room continues to blur, and everything feels as if it's being detached from her and distant. Heart beating weakly. Her mind was filled with nothingness, confusion, and tears still running down her face. Laying still, saying nothing, almost lifeless. Slipping into the darkness. Doctors calmed down slightly and the rush and adrenaline slowed as well. Her heartbeat was slowed but still stuttered and suffered. Her eyes were purple, looking into the ceiling with dimmed lights. Soon, all of the doctors leaving out of the room. But one particular doctor stayed by the door, leaving it unknowingly cracked. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know what has happened to her. Her heart is abruptly failing on us, and I'm not sure if her body is about to withstand all of this tension with her dash." A loud beeping strayed throughout the room, and it gave her a splitting headache. She wished that it would turn off, or the volume would at least lower. But she felt too tried to do anything about it. But then that's when she actually came to her senses. This her time. Her breath starts coming in shallow gasps. Was her "my time is almost up." The world around her seemed to blur and fade away, as if she was watching it through a thick fog. Everything feels distant and depressing, as if it was already slipping away into some unknown. Feeling her heart beating weakly in my chest, each beat slower and more labored than the last. Thoughts are a jumbled mess, memories and regrets swirling around in her mind like a chaotic storm. Starting to be fully filled with a sense of overwhelming sadness, knowing that people feel this way when they are about to leave this world. She was feeling this way as she is about to leave this world. Leaving everything behind, all that they have ever known and loved. Yet, at the same time, there is a strange sense of peace that washes over her. Oh well, all of her cares that have plagued her throughout her life. In this moment, I am both terrified and at peace, knowing that her time on this earth is actually coming to an end. And as I slip away into the darkness, I can only hope that I have lived a life that was meaningful and filled with love. I think I will be happier now. She thought of her late parents, her mother, her father. I wonder where they are right now, breathing heavy, and she looked pale. She thought, looking around the bland, boring room that she was placed in. She then began to let tears slowly roll down her face. Goodbyes are truly the worst. Maybe this is why my mother wasn't able to do it. She paused and breathed in. God. Goodbye, Katja, Mitsuki and Mizura, Auntie Terra Victoria, Class 1A and Professor Aizawa. Goodbye, oh God. Her tears chalked up her word, my violin, music, theater, orchestra, my record player, and then she stopped, and felt like she couldn't even say anything more, tears rolling down her face non-stop. And Izuku, memories flowing through her thoughts and feelings and nostalgic moments replaying in her mind. Goodbye, Izuku, and she swallowed hard before she took her last breath before she was slowly swallowed into the darkness. And until we meet again, mon amour. Rushed through the snow to get to 𝐻/N was one of the saddest nights of life. I ran into the hospital when all three of the Bakugus were already walking out with expressionless masks in their face. I was too late. Kaken brushed past me and then I started to break down. My knees dropped to the floor and I started to cry. And I couldn't stop. My heart started to ache in pain. And that didn't stop for a while either. 𝐻/N was never about her past and personal life. But one day, on our way back from one of our late-night convenience store runs, she opened up. She told me about her mother, and how that day that I went to her violin concert all those years ago was the same day her mother had died due to the fact that her quirk had been wearing down her body all of the years of her life. And soon after, her father pasted too, due to the heavy drug addiction that he gained after his wife's passing.